The words demonic faction echoed like a curse in Raze's mind, triggering a rush of memories he didn't welcome. That name had surfaced a few times since his arrival in the world of Pagna, and never in a positive context. Among the three dominant factions, light, dark, and demonic, the latter was regarded with the most fear. Not hatred, not disdain, fear. The kind that ran deep in every warrior's bones. In the past, the demonic faction had come dangerously close to conquering the entire continent. The threat was so dire, the light and dark factions had been forced into an uneasy alliance to repel them. Even the Altar organization, for all its global reach and influence, avoided their territory almost entirely. To Raze, that had made the demonic faction useful. A place to vanish if the world turned against him. So, if I have demonic energy, then does that mean Dame was from the demonic faction? Raze wondered. He's the one who gave me the book, and he definitely clashed with that woman from the light faction. Raze couldn't really blame Dame. He likely assumed Raze came from another world, one where such divisions didn't exist. But now Raze was paying the price for that ignorance. If they think I'm from the demonic faction, will everyone here turn on me? How long do I have before I'm hunted? Don't look so tense, Gunther said, cutting into Raze's spiral of thought. Judging by your reaction, you either don't know what the demonic faction is, or you're a fantastic actor. Either way, time will tell. He crossed his arms and continued. For me, I don't care what energy you cultivate. People get caught up in power types and origins, light, dark, demonic, but it's all just energy. What matters are your values. What kind of warrior do you want to become? Raze blinked in surprise. He hadn't expected that. To me, Gunther went on, what defines a true dark faction warrior is belief in our ideals, not what kind of energy pulses in your veins. But don't expect everyone to agree with me. If people here learn you're cultivating demonic energy, they won't ask questions. They'll see you as the enemy. His voice grew stern. While you're at the academy, use only dark faction techniques. If no one inspects your energy like I did, you'll be safe. Raze nodded. That wasn't a problem. He barely knew any martial skills to begin with. Just one technique and 2 forms of cultivation. You pass, Gunther suddenly declared, then turned on his heel and walked off. The murmuring students around them fell silent. They hadn't been able to hear what was said, but the result shocked them. Did he just say pass? All 3 no-names passed. Seriously, how could they reach the first stage? They don't have any backgrounds. Connections? Don't be ridiculous. They're nobodies. Mata, standing nearby, watched his brother walk away with a slight smirk on his face, something Mata had never seen before. His eyes narrowed. Who the hell are you really? Gunther exhaled a long breath as he walked. His mission here wasn't done yet, but he was already dreading what lay ahead. Forget assessments. I just want to find this so-called Dark Magus and claim my reward from the Crimson Crane. That was his real goal. Simeon jogged over, clapping a hand on Raze's shoulder. You really pulled it off. Not gonna lie, I thought we'd be down 1 man. Sappha stood nearby, stiff. She could feel the tension in the air, the glares coming from students who hadn't made it. Resentment hung over the courtyard like a storm cloud. While Raze had been dealing with Gunther, trouble had already broken out among the disqualified students. One particularly vocal teen had resisted, only to be knocked out cold. After that, no one else protested. But as they passed the courtyard, they all glared daggers at Raze, Simeon, and Sappha. They couldn't lash out at the examiners, but they could. That is, until Pincer turned his gaze on them. One look from him, and even the most furious student thought twice. With a booming clap, Pincer drew everyone's attention. The shockwave rippled through the air. We move to the next phase of the assessment, he declared. I will be supervising it personally. Everyone, line up on this side of the courtyard. When your number is called, move to the opposite side. Numbers were called in sequence. One by one, students were separated into 2 groups. At first, it seemed random until they realized what was really happening. Numbers 1 through 5, students from the top clans and others with notable reputations, were all placed together. Wait, is he splitting us into strong and weak groups? Maybe it's to balance the next challenge. There's no way they'd make us fight those monsters head-on, right? Safa glanced nervously at Raze. Her stomach twisted. If they were on opposing teams, what would that mean? But her concerns were quickly eased. All right, Pincer announced. That should do it. A fair split. Now look to your left and right. These people are your teammates. You'll be going head-to-head against the other group. A murmur swept through the crowd. This was far from fair. It was suicide. Everyone in Ray's group looked at the other side, at the elite students, the prodigies, the clan disciples, and felt their confidence crumble. Guess we're the underdogs, Simeon said with a nervous laugh. At least we're not going against you, he added, nodding to Raze. I was never planning to fail, Raze replied, eyes narrowing. He looked across the courtyard, directly at the 5 strongest students, each one a representative of their clan's power. His enemies. The next test hadn't even begun, but one thing was already clear. This wasn't an assessment anymore. It was war. A new set of instructors arrived at the academy, easily recognizable by their deep purple robes and towering conical hats that swayed comically with every step. To Raze, they looked absurd, but at least they were easy to spot. And more importantly, easy to avoid when needed. Without much fanfare, the instructors rolled in 2 large crates filled with what appeared to be stones. Small, gray, unremarkable pebbles. No energy, no magical glow, just rocks. Then, with practiced efficiency, the staff chalked a thick white line down the center of the courtyard, eventually forming a massive rectangle split in 2. The crates were placed to the center, 1 per side. Pincer stood tall, casually tossing a stone up and down in his palm. These pebbles, he began, are your only weapons for the second assessment. A hush swept over the students. Let's talk about how you fail. Step outside your side of the white line. You're out. Forfeit. You're out. Unable to move. Also out. Many students tensed at that last part. Your objective is simple. Hit an opponent with a pebble. 1 hit is all it takes to pass. But beware, if you don't hit anyone, you fail. You don't need to eliminate others, but if you're taken down, you're done. He tossed the pebble 1 last time, then slammed it to the ground. With a boom, the stone exploded, leaving a crater where it landed. A chill rippled through the students. Add chi to your throw, and even a pebble becomes deadly, Pincer added. Gunther, standing off to the side, rubbed his temples. You're a demon, Pincer, trying to weed out as many as possible this early. To many, the test felt rigged. All the elites, the top clan disciples, had been placed on one side. The remaining no-names and average fighters were stuck on the other. But no one dared protest, not with Pincer watching. The assessment begins now. For a moment, hesitation reigned. Ray's side stalled. Rushing toward the crates meant exposing themselves. On the opposite side, however, the elite students charged without fear. Leading them was Rictor, a disciple of one of the top 5 clans. He swooped down, scooped a stone, and flung it with frightening precision. It hit a student's leg with a crack of chi-enhanced force, sending them to the ground screaming. Chaos followed. Pebbles flew across the field like arrows in a war. Cries and grunts rang out as students were hit, some battered and bruised, others outright crippled. Still, not every hit was devastating. Many were glancing blows, causing minor injuries. But as bodies fell or forfeited, the field grew bloodier by the minute. Some fought back with desperation, hurling stones at random. Others, like Mata, calmly deflected stones with flowing motions, his hand guiding a pebble aside like water, slipping past a rock. Where are you, no-name? Mata scanned the field. Don't tell me you've already been taken out. But Raze and his 2 allies were very much present, unharmed. They hadn't budged much from their starting positions, moving only when necessary. Each time a stone neared them, they executed a small, efficient sidestep, just enough to dodge. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. The 2-step shift, Gunther thought, observing with approval. Simple, precise, low energy usage. They analyzed the battlefield instead of panicking. These kids have real composure. Meanwhile, other students, many from noble clans, were flailing in frustration. Some had already failed, while the no-names continued to hold their ground. Is it just me, Simeon muttered, dodging another stone? Or are more of these rocks flying our way now? He was right. The rate of incoming attacks had increased. As more students fell, attention shifted. How are they still standing? Even their simple movements annoyed the others. And in that frustration, Ray's group had become a target. It's fine, Ray said calmly. As more people drop, the field opens up. We'll have better visibility and more room to move. But throwing now is a risk. If we kneel to grab a pebble, we'll expose ourselves. He waited, analyzing. Timing was everything. When exhaustion and recklessness peaked, that's when they would strike. But trouble brewed, not from the front, but behind. One of their own teammates had picked up a pebble. What are they even doing here? The student thought bitterly. Showing off with some basic sidestep? They don't belong. He hurled the stone with all his strength, straight at Simeon's back. Clank! The stone bounced harmlessly off his leg and dropped to the ground. Simeon turned around in disbelief. Did someone on our side just throw a rock at me? The attacker blinked, just as stunned. The stone had hit cleanly, yet Simeon hadn't flinched. No bruise. No break. Ray's lips curled into a smile. We've had the answer the whole time, he whispered. Then he turned to Simeon, eyes gleaming. Come on, metal boy. Let's begin our attack.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
With the effect of the mythical grade earring, Simeon had a level 1 metal body. Nearly all of the students, although Pagna warriors, they were a stage 1 Pagna warrior. With chi infused through them, they wouldn't be able to harm Simeon's body. The others wouldn't know this, so it was time for them to use him as a human shield. Simeon, block all the hits and head forward. Raze shouted, having caught the gist of what Raze was planning. He listened and did as asked. You don't have to tell me twice, as I said. I'll do as you say. Like a bull, Simeon charged forward, and Safa and Raze followed behind in almost a straight line. Seeing another student coming directly toward them, the other students, of course, had decided to target him. Throwing the rocks, they bounced off his body, even if infused with chi, doing next to no damage at all and not slowing him down. When they were close enough to the center line, Raze and Safa rolled to the side and picked up a rock. Nearly at the exact same time, they threw their rocks at two of the students closest. It was infused with chi and hit the student on the knee. It jolted his leg forward, and he fell to the floor. It was the same for the person that Safa had hit as well. And now it's my turn, Simeon said, picking up a rock. Rather than throwing it at another student, Simeon decided to play it safe and threw a stone at the person who was already on the ground, hitting him as he was coming back up. All right, retreat, Simeon stated. The three only had to hit a student, which meant they had now passed, as long as they could survive until the assessment was over. That damn kid. He wasn't the only one that was special, Gunther smiled. How are these no-names surprising me more and more? The other two, they didn't have any demonic chi inside them. It's clear they know each other. The teamwork and trust they put into each other. It's like those that have been through life and death with each other. Moving back, it was time for the three to get out of there and just hide behind the other students. As they were retreating, though, a stone came out faster and more powerful than the others. Simeon was happy to block it with his body, but when it hit him in his stomach, it had hit deep, causing his eyes to bulge out slightly, the air from his stomach to pop out. He couldn't breathe and knelt over, nearly causing the other two to trip. Oh, you're still standing. Now that hurt my pride a little, Richter said with another stone in his hand. Originally, the main disciples were too busy dealing with the others, taking out as many as they could, but the act of the three with no name had managed to catch their eye. Unfortunately for you guys, you are not allowed to reach our place. Standing next to Richter were the other 5 clan disciples. Richter, Mata, Cherry, Lisa, and Asep. They had stayed close to each other, having a competition of sorts, seeing how many they could take out. But after seeing Simeon's act, a suggestion had come up. Hey, why don't we go ahead and see who could take out the 3 no-names first? Asep suggested. The one who takes out the most wins. I guess that will make this boring game a little more interesting, Cherry claimed, her slender fingers on her hip. Simeon had recovered, but the situation wasn't looking good for them. The students that were close to them until this point had stepped away. Everyone could tell that they had become their targets. All 5 of them hurled the rocks at the same time, all of them powered with chi. They flew swiftly in the air, and immediately Simeon lifted his arms up and his body, blocking them from the other 2. Arc! Simeon screamed as the rocks hit him all over. His metal body was too weak for the amount of power they were using. "What are you doing? Idiot, protect yourself!" Raze shouted at him. "Hey, don't you remember what I said?" Simeon placed his hands on his legs and got up again. "I owe you my life. I owe everything to you. It's because of you that I'm even here in the first place. So shut up and let me do what I want." A rock went whizzing past Simeon's face and arms and produced a large cut, drawing blood. The tactic of the disciples had changed a bit. If they couldn't take them down, then they just had to injure them to the point where they could give up. A large rock hit Sappha in the stomach again, and as she knelt down, several of the rocks went past. They were now throwing more than one at a time. Sappha tried to move out of the way, but was hit on the shoulder and heard a loud crack in her arm. AHS. She tried to scream, but no noise was coming out. "What the hell?" Cherry pointed. "That girl, she didn't scream. Can she not scream? Is she a mute?" It wasn't just Sappha, though. Raze had struggled as well. He went to move and avoided one stone, but another had hit his forearm. It hadn't broken it, but it was now throbbing with pain. It would be easier if you all just decided to give up. Otherwise, this is going to be very painful for you. Mata threw another rock, and the rest followed. They had continued to go through the air, with the 3 of them avoiding them, trying their best, but they got hit, the pain increasing and spreading throughout their body in more areas. Not all of them hit their bodies, as many had narrowly passed them, causing large cuts on their body. Blood was dripping from all 3 of them, but each of them refused to yield. "Hey," Gunther called out, "don't you think you should end the assessment? The others aren't even throwing stones at each other anymore and are just watching the spectacle. Haven't they proven enough? Since when did you become so soft?" Pincer replied, "You know, if those 3 pass and get through, they will be treated much worse than this. If they can't get through this much, then it's best that they stop here." Another round of stones was thrown, and it had hit the 3. As it did, it sent them to the floor, but they had nearly been too hurt to even scream in pain anymore, too tired. Slowly, each one of them got off the ground. Sappha had even slipped back down, falling onto the floor. She pushed herself up and looked ahead, looking at her brother's back. "What's with your eyes?" Mata shouted. "What the heck do you think you're staring at? You're no-names. You are at the bottom, and your duty is to serve us, so why are you looking at us with those eyes?" Raze had his head held slightly down, yet his eyes were looking straight ahead at the 5 of them. "I can't help but chuckle. This scene, this whole thing, it feels incredibly familiar to me. Now I know, these 5, they remind me of the Grand Magus." Thinking this, a burning energy was running through Raze's body, and he lifted his hand, pointing at the 3. "The image of every single one of you is burned into my mind." Raze said, "I won't forget what you guys did to us today, singling us out, and hey." Raze said, as he raised his weak hand, covered in cuts, blood dripping down his forearm. He then lifted his middle finger right up toward them. "We have a name, you dumb F***CKs. We are the Cromwells." The other students on both sides looked at each other. The Cromwells? Was it a name they had heard before? They hadn't heard of such a clan, a merchant, or anyone that went by that name. It sounded strange and unusual by their standards as well. A no-name giving themselves a name. Mata said, turning to look at Gunther for a few moments before he turned to look back at the 3. How pathetic. The single rock was hurled at the group. With how many times they had been hit, it was too painful for them to move. For the last few, they had just been taking the hits right on, but before the rock had even reached them, Sappha stumbled again, barely able to stand. Out of all of them, she had been most affected by the hits and looked the weakest, and Mata had sensed this. If he was just to get rid of one of them, then wouldn't they all fall? The path of the rock was clear, and it was heading right for Sappha's chest. There were only rules against hitting the head. Raze lifted his hand, but it was short of being able to block the rock. "Wind, guide it to me," Raze whispered. The rock, as if being pulled by an invisible force, changed direction in the air. It curved around and landed straight in Ray's hand, catching the chi-powered rock with no problem at all. You went too far. Until a moment ago, all of the students were focused on the little game the disciples had set up. They were mesmerized by what they were seeing since the three no-names hadn't given up yet, but not mesmerized in a good way. They had seen a number of students from clans get hit and have wounds on their bodies far less severe than the ones on the no-names that had already given up. It was unbelievable to them all. In the society of Pagna, no-names were at the bottom of a caste system. They were only given the most basic of jobs. Their families were too poor to send their children to school, too weak to afford food to grow their strength. Because of this, no-names never broke the cycle and always remained at the bottom of the system. They could only do small jobs to help others, leaving everyone to think of them as lesser people. It had been drilled into their heads so much that even the no-names believed it themselves. They were just meant to give their lives to those who made the world go round. This was why it was already a big shock to see no-names taking the assessment in the first place. And now to witness them putting up a fight, it wasn't encouraging to them. It was sickening. The annoying bugs should have stayed down, and they deserved to get what was happening to them. For each time they stood up, it made the others feel lesser themselves. How could these lesser, dirty humans try to one-up them? They all wanted to watch them fail, and fail miserably, because if they passed, then it would mean a no-name was equal to them. However, all of these thoughts almost immediately disappeared from their heads for a moment when they had witnessed what Raze had just done. Hey, am I imagining things, or did that rock move mid-air and go right toward his hands? No, you're not crazy. I saw it as well. Hey, that's not the crazy part, another student said. Are you forgetting who threw it? It was Mada, one of the leading disciples from the Flowing Force clan. He threw the thing with chi, and he was able to catch it like it was nothing. Both Pincer and Gunther had been watching the thing carefully, and Gunther himself was thinking of intervening. With the amount of force the last throw had, it wouldn't be so surprising when it hit that girl's chest that it could have killed her. However, the Academy didn't have to worry about these things, at least not with a no-name, because there would be no one who could really complain about their death. Was it some type of palm suction technique? Gunther thought. The stone, it moved as if it was magnetized toward his hand. It has to be a technique of some sort. There are many techniques from various different clans. If that child was able to pick up a demonic cultivation technique, then something like this wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities. With the stone in his hand, Raze opened his fingers, allowing the stone to drop onto the floor. He wanted to throw it back with all of his might, but he was already injured and too tired for that. These clan members had more stamina and strength than them. They were either already stage 2 warriors or close to it. Huffing and panting, trying to gather their breath back, Safa and Simeon had seen what Raze had done, and they had a feeling they knew exactly what it was that he was using right now. What is this? You think just because you got lucky you can stand there like that? Mada's face was turning red. He was getting embarrassed. How could he have failed to take down the no-names? And most of all, his brother was watching him. Picking up another one of the stones, he hurled it through the air again at full force. It went on the same path as before. It wasn't going for Raze or Simeon, but instead it was going for Safa. Wind, guide it to me, Raze whispered again. It was a magic spell, one based on the new wind attribute he had gained. Since the object was fairly light, it could easily be influenced by a small amount of wind magic. Then before the stone would end up in his palm, the wind magic would create a small burst, slowing it down before it eventually went right into his hand again. Raze opened his fingers, and the stone dropped to the floor. There were audible gasps as they saw this. Since he had done the same thing twice in a row, it was clear it wasn't a fluke. Haha, so interesting, Rictor claimed. What an interesting technique this one has learned. I would have loved to have just let you go by, but the threat that you made against us before, I will have to take it as a serious one. Kneeling down, Rictor had picked up a stone from the ground and was ready to throw it until a loud bang interrupted him. It was the same bang from before, and they could see that Pincer had his 2 hands together, having finished his clap. The assessment is over. All of those that have yet to be eliminated You have passed and are now able to head to the third part of the assessment. Pincer declared. As if it was a signal, immediately Sappha and Simeon had collapsed onto the ground. However, Raze stayed on his feet and didn't look away from the 5 disciples. "What a disgusting monster," Richter said, dropping the stone and walking away. With the assessment being a relatively tough one, there were many that had sustained injuries. Those that didn't need to be healed were free to take a break and be treated to food and drink in the hall. While the others, they had headed to a large hall where a team of physicians were making quick work of looking after all of the others. They were using a blend of plants, herbs, alchemy-made pills, as well as activating the chi in their bodies through a touch of their own. In the corner, it was Raze's turn to be looked at, but before the young man could get to him, a hand grabbed his fist. "It's okay. I will deal with them. I know how to do this stuff," Gunther said. The physician went away, leaving the medicine on the ground, and went to deal with Simeon and Sappha. Meanwhile, Gunther just handed over the bowl of a strange liquid paste to him to apply it to himself. "I thought I would help you out. I didn't want your secret to be revealed." Gunther winked. "You also seemed like the type that didn't like to be touched too much." It was quite amazing to Raze how a person could tell so much from a look. Gunther was skilled in more ways than just his power and tools. "Anyway, I came over to tell you something anyway. You should drop out of the next assessment." Once again, Gunther had approached Raze, and this wasn't going unnoticed by all of the other students who were being treated in the room. "Hey, does that no-name really have connections? Maybe he's an unwanted son, an illegitimate child of a clan head and a concubine. That stuff happens all the time, right? Then he comes back to exact his revenge on all his brothers, but there is a kind brother looking out for him. What type of crap are you spouting? Go take your fantasy crap elsewhere." Clearly, he just thinks he has some talent, so he's talking to him. It was true. Gunther had approached Raze because he thought he was a skillful student, but due to him being a no-name, he knew that this wasn't a blessing in this situation, but it was actually worse off for him. "If we gotten this far, why do you want us to drop out?" Raze asked. "Is it because of what happened during this assessment, or do you have your own motive?" Letting out a big sigh, Gunther turned to look around. He then passed over a few more medicine pills that had been given and handed them over. Raze was applying the green substance onto his cuts. His arm would sting for a few moments, but he only let out a small grunt before continuing elsewhere, while there were literal sounds of screams coming from others. "You don't need to put on the tough guy act with me," Gunther smiled. "Look, we told you at the beginning that the assessments were just to evaluate you. With the second assessment over, everyone has already passed. The third assessment is just to determine what groups to put you in. Then shouldn't I still try my best? Better groups will have access to better resources, correct?" Raze asked. Gunther wasn't wrong about this kid. He had seen it before, the certain look he would have in his eyes, the look of wanting more power no matter what it took. Raze wasn't the only one. People in the entire continent went through crazy events and things, which gave them all determination to get stronger. What separated people was just how strong this determination was. "You should know resources are useless if you're dead, right?" Gunther replied back. "Look, I shouldn't really be telling you this, but you seem to be a smart one, so I'll give you the details of the next event. It's a hunting ground," Gunther explained. "Behind the academy, there's a large forest. Small beasts known as hop bunnies will be released, and it's the students' jobs to get as many power stones from the beasts as possible. In a way, this whole event is just a way for students to flex or give themselves a ranking amongst each other, as really it will be just the disciples of the 5 main clans competing against each other. But did you notice why it will be a problem?" Thinking about it for a while, Raze had managed to come to a conclusion based on the carefully selected words. "Because the task is to gather power stones, not to kill the beasts," Raze answered. "I knew you were a smart one. If I could, I would make you my own disciple right now, but my arts won't be the best for you." Gunther continued. "The fact that the assessment is to gather stones means it encourages the others to take stones from others, and that will be by force if necessary. You and your friends already stand out a lot, and the main clan disciples aren't going to like that. Now, it seems like they have a little grudge against you, so the best thing for all of you to do is just not gather any stones and avoid any more attention. With his warning given, Gunther felt like he had done the deed he needed to do and started to head off to set up the next steps. Crap. I was meant to ask what that technique he used earlier was with the stone. That was pretty cool. I was going to ask him if he had ever heard about the Dark Magus as well. Oh well, I guess I can just save that for next time we meet, Gunther thought. The advice given by Gunther seemed genuine, but Raze felt like he was still too naive. He was looking at the others from his point of view and how he would act, but people were different in the world. There wasn't black or white. There were multiple shades of gray in between. Raze knew that even if he didn't gather any power stones, they would still target him, and not just him but the others as well. Now, I need to figure out how to deal with it. Mata, while walking around the hallways of the academy, had passed by and heard a few interesting things. Some of the students had only minor wounds, and after they had been looked at, they were heading to the canteen for some food before the next assessment. Why do you think you want to see him? How am I meant to know? Maybe they're secret lovers or something. The other student punched his shoulder. Hey, if they catch you saying that stuff about an examiner, then you're dead. Still, it is strange that a no-name is receiving so much attention. Hey, Mata called out. What are you guys talking about? The two students glanced at each other. They knew who Mata was and thought that he might have overheard what he said. No, it was quite clear he had, and now they were fearing the worst and were preparing for a beating. We're sorry, the students bowed down. We were just joking around. We saw Gunther and the no-name from before, the one that caught the white-haired one, talking to each other. Mata immediately started to clench his fist hard until his knuckles were turning white. Why does he care about a no-name so much? He's never looked at me with the same expression, much less acknowledged I even exist, yet he's paying so much attention to him. All right then, Gunther, let's see how you react when I get rid of him. The academy had some of the top physicians and an abundance of supplies that they could use to speed up the recovery process. They were even more equipped than some of the top clans, but not the very best. This was all due to the investment by all of the clans in the Dark faction in the first place. They needed to see a return on their investment. One student had healed quicker than others. As it turned out, his injuries weren't as severe as they looked. That was Simeon, and he only had one answer to that. The reason had to be due to the earring that made his body a little special compared to others. What is this place? Simeon's eyes were wide as he walked into the toilet. He never thought he would have this type of reaction to seeing a place where waste was disposed of, but he was over the moon because he hadn't seen something so luxurious. There are these holes where people can wash their hands and collect the water. Where does the water even go? In the toilets, it's not just a hole in the ground, but something you can sit on as well. I wonder, are you meant to stand on the seat or what? But wouldn't that break it? Entering the toilet, Simeon decided to sit with his back facing the door, placing his two legs in front of him and using the top of the toilet next to his face like a little shelf. I have no idea if this is right or wrong. How are you meant to use this thing? It was quite the head-scratcher, but he had only come in for a short visit. After doing what needed to be done, he proceeded to wash his hands, and when he looked up, he was surprised to see that someone else was in the toilets with him. Quickly, Simeon placed his head down and continued to rub his hands, avoiding eye contact. If you continue to rub your hands so fast like that, then the skin is going to come off them, Richter said. The tall student with a feminine face, Richter, was someone who had caught the attention of everyone, and his name was one that all the students would remember. That was because he was one of the disciples of the 5 major clans. Not only that, but he belonged to the Erupting Fist clan, the clan with the clan head that was the closest to reaching the deity stage, and also the one that was the principal of the Dark Faction Academy. Thanks for that, Simeon nervously said, and tried to walk out of the toilets as quickly as he could, until Richter sat up on the washing stations and looked directly at Simeon, somewhat blocking his path. Simeon could forcibly move around him, but he had a feeling that if he did that, it wouldn't be the best of ideas. I saw you out there. You have quite the strong body. You are impressive, a lot more than the others. I can't believe it myself. I can't believe you're really a no-name, Richter claimed. Imagine how strong you would be if you were to join a clan. And what a coincidence that I have taken a liking to you, and I'm part of a strong clan with a high position. In the past, Simeon would have done anything to bite at the chance of joining a clan, even the Red Brigade, and now he was getting the chance to join the Erupting Fist. People would have done anything to get this opportunity. However, with what had happened to them in the second assessment, a bad taste was left in Simeon's mouth, and besides, he had made a promise already. It would be an honor to join a clan like yours, but I'm afraid a no-name like me would ruin the reputation of your clan. I believe I will try my best to progress in the academy as I have done so far, Simeon answered politely, trying not to make it sound like an outright rejection. Oh, but you can join. I am here to make you an offer. In the next assessment, we will be going through the grounds forest. Take the white-haired boy northwest, and if you do that, then I will be happy to put in a good word for you, Richter suggested. Simeon thought this was the case, and it was one of the reasons why he was trying to avoid a conversation. Can this guy not get the hint that I just turned him down? Or has he never been turned down before? Simeon looked at Richter's face, and with a face like that, he imagined that might have been the case. Men and women would both be drawn to a person looking like they had been dropped from the heavens. Why? Why are you going after Raze? Simeon asked. Laughter followed after the question had been asked. I think you have it all wrong, young one. I'm not going after your friend Raze. I'm going after you. Richter jumped off from the washing area and walked close to Simeon, looking down at him with a large smile. You see, there are many things that excite me, but seeing people placed in a predicament where they feel they have no choice but to betray those that they thought were close to them, well, that just makes me feel ecstatic. Standing so close, Simeon was sure of it, that around his waist, he could feel something poking him. What the heck is wrong with this guy? Is he aroused right now? Simeon went to move away, but immediately had been grabbed by Richter. It was a firm grip on his wrist, and it felt hot to the touch. Simeon felt like his skin was burning slightly. I know you no-names would do anything to join a clan like mine. You're lucky my requirement is just a simple betrayal and not something else. Do the task and get rewarded. I'll even give you a few cheap pills. However, if you fail, I might just go ahead and ask that girl that seems close to him instead. Richter let go and exited the toilets. The moment he did, Simeon felt like he could breathe again. Looking at his arm, he could see a mark had been left behind. The skin had gone a little redder through his dark-toned arm. Crap! Now I feel like crap. If that was Sappha, I bet she would have fought back at the mention of her brother. Yet here I am saying I'm loyal and didn't do a thing. Returning from the toilet to the others, Simeon was trying to cover up the marking on his arm. He was playing with his sleeves a bit when he joined the others and noticed that many of the students around them looked as if they had made a recovery. Should I tell Raze what just happened? But then, what about Sappha? What will happen to her if they start to target her? What do I do? Is something wrong? Raze asked. With the students having recovered, they were then escorted to the area where the third part of the assessment would take place. All 300 students that had made it were brought to the edge of the academy city at the very back, leading into the dark forest. The night sky had come out, as it had been hours since their first assessment. The moonlight lit up the faces of them all as Pincer and Gunther stood at the front. All right, everyone, it's time for the third part of the assessment to begin, Pincer claimed. Looking around him, Simeon had caught the eye of Richter again. He slightly nodded his head. Crap, what do I do? Simeon thought. Before the third assessment was to begin, the rules were explained to all of them. It was just as Gunther had said before. The students were to go on a hunt. Inside, there were blue bunny beasts. These were small creatures that looked like bunnies, but had blue fur along with red eyes. They were more agile than a standard bunny and had quite a bite. The blue-furred bunnies were raised at the academy as a way for them to farm level 1 power stones. This was effective because bunnies reproduced a lot, and they were one of the least dangerous beasts in terms of strength. The time limit was until the sun rose, so they had an extremely large amount of time. It was to allow the group to plan and strategize properly. I will remind you all again, Pincer had his arms behind his back and his large chest pushed forward as he spoke. There are no rules in how you get these power stones. Steal, lay traps, or even team up against each other. The only rule is you're not to kill your fellow students. For those who bring back power stones, and a large number of them, you will be rewarded by the academy greatly. We are an academy that helps focus on those who are talented to grow and reach the skies, so show us how talented you are. Many of the students who had been in the weaker group from the last assessment weren't too pleased about the events. Although their bodies had been healed, it was really only the severe wounds. They were still sore, still bruised and injured, while the other side had suffered next to no injuries. Although they wouldn't necessarily be going against each other like in the last assessment, they felt like it was a little unfair. "What are you all waiting for, go?" Pincer shouted, and with a clap, it was the signal that the assessment had started. Several of the students ran straight into the forest, including the 5 main clan disciples, with Rictor turning his head, looking back, and making eye contact with Simeon. Not all of them had headed straight into the forest, though. Some of the students were talking to each other, trying to see who would team up with them to give them a better chance against the stronger students, and one of those groups was Raze. Sappha started to make signals with her hands as she pointed toward Raze. It looked like she was suggesting some traps the 3 of them could use to catch some of the bunnies, but Raze shook his head. "No, we don't need to do any of that," Raze replied. "Because we're not going to be hunting anything. We're just going to stay here until the assessment is over. There's no need for us to get any crystals." The words were said relatively loudly, and it was then that Gunther and Pincer had headed back into the academy. The large gate doors that they had come out of had now been locked from the other side. There was no way back into the academy other than scaling the walls or through the doors. "Wait, seriously," Simeon said, tapping his foot on the ground at a relatively fast rate. "Are we not going to hunt? Won't we get kicked out of the academy?" "We won't," Raze answered. "And besides, we can just stay here and then beat up the guys that come at the end. I bet a lot of people are going to do that. If we do that, then we will be safe." Raze didn't want to reveal the inside information he had, that everyone had already passed. It hadn't been mentioned, but from the looks of things, other students already knew that as well. Still, in a position where they were hated by everyone, it was best not to let things spill. "But if we do that, will we get the most crystals? Don't you want to beat those guys because of what they've done to us? I'm sure with your head, you could do something that will help us win this," Simeon shouted, as if he was agitated by Raze. "Fine," Raze said. "If you feel that strongly about it, then why don't you lead the way?" An unnerving smile appeared on Raze's face, one that made Simeon wonder who was more frightening, Rictor or him. Turning around, Simeon headed into the forest, and the 2 followed him. As he did, he made sure to head northwest. The group had continued forward for a while, and they had passed a few of the blue-furred bunnies. As soon as their feet touched a large leaf or made some noise, the bunnies would run away. It didn't matter, though, because Simeon hadn't slowed down and started to run forward. The others continued until 3 students landed right in front of them. Raze stopped in his tracks immediately, and 2 more students arrived behind them. It didn't take long to figure out who they were. It was the 5 major clan disciples. "It's nice to meet you again," Rictor said with a smile. "I bet you thought we wouldn't waste time with you, because you're a no-name, but you see, you insulted us all with your crude finger from before. That look in your eyes from before, it looked like you wanted to kill us. So here's your chance. Why don't you do something?" Rictor raised both of his hands by his side. He was gloating, and he was sure that Raze wouldn't try something so daft. "Oh, and before I forget, thank you for bringing him here." Rictor threw over a red small stone. Simeon caught it and could see it was a power stone. "You and the girl have done splendidly. The 2 of you may go, and I'll give you a call when I need you again." Sappha immediately turned to Simeon. She was about to give him an earful, or at least whatever noise she could make out her mouth. That was until Raze hit her hard at the back of her neck, causing her to pass out. Simeon caught her before she hit the floor and started to walk out of the area. He had walked past both Mata and Rictor, and neither of them had done anything. He gave one last look at Raze before he started to run off. "How does it feel to be betrayed by one of your friends?" Rictor asked. "I bet he was someone who you thought was like family to you, right? And look at what happened. You know, all it took was a small, simple promise for him to join our clan. He traded you for that. That's how worthless your no-name life is." Rictor was laughing, and, as he would readjust his belt that was close to his waist. He was unable to keep the excitement that was rising in his body. While Simeon was walking back, he couldn't help but worry. "Raze, you have a plan, right? A plan to get out of that situation?" Simeon thought. Memories had flashed in his head from before the event. When Simeon had returned from the toilet, he had decided to tell Raze everything that had happened, and the answer he had given back was surprising. "Do it," Raze said. "Do what he said, work for them, and pretend he has you under control." "But Raze, it's a trap. Even if it's just one of the disciples, they'll take you out," Simeon said. "True, but can't you tell by the way they are acting? They are targeting me regardless, and if you try to fight back, they'll target you as well. If you play along, you too won't become their target, and you'll get something out of it. Trust me, even if you didn't do this, they would just find some way anyway." Running back from the way they came, Simeon couldn't help but worry. Even if he had strange powers, how was he meant to take on all 5 of them on his own at once? "Come on, do something," Richter shouted out again. In response, Raze looked up at the sky, and then around the area they were in. "I have no chance if I was to fight all 5 of you. Not even if I gave it everything I have," Raze said to himself. "But do you know what happens when a person uses a large amount of magic? A disaster. All of you are acting like some third-rate villain, hunting down your prey, but you have no idea. I'm the one who hunts." Being part of the altar group, Raze had been told that there was a specific rule that was designated for those from Altarian. While in the world of Pagna, one wasn't supposed to use magic. The reason for that rule was because of portals. Portals linked to other dimensions were attracted to the magic used. So as long as Raze used enough magic, then he could summon a portal and create a portal outbreak. If I summon a portal now, I have no clue what type of dimension will open up. Beasts might come out that are even too hard for me to handle, Raze thought. On top of that, Altar will come and investigate. When they find out that I was here, no doubt I will be placed as number 1 on their list, and then the whole crap with the Red Brigade clan will happen all over again. Despite all of this, he had no choice. Would the disciples just give him a simple beating, or would they cripple him and make sure he could never go against them again? It was too much of a risk. The dark magic started to swirl around his arms, ready to explode. "Wait!" Mata shouted. The reaction from the other disciples was one of confusion, which made Raze quickly cancel his magic. At times it was best to also be patient and to wait and see what would unfold. Mata turned his back towards Raze and looked straight ahead at Richter. "Just this once, I ask you to let me deal with this. I need to do this." Richter looked down at Mata, bowing to him. He liked this feeling. It would be nice to have the Flowing Force clan owe me a favor. "Fine, I shall let you play with this one, as I have another toy that I am far more interested in." Clicking his fingers, Richter disappeared from the place along with the other 4. Although they were all from separate clans, in the past, all 5 would frequently visit each other. They knew each other well, but what they didn't know was each other's strength. They had never gone against each other, but they listened to the words of Richter more than any, due to his position in the Dark Faction clan. Being the closest to the deity rank, he was somewhat thought of as the leader of the Dark Faction. "Ha! What is this? Is this a stroke of luck for me?" Raze thought. "With my life, I thought I had no such thing. I guess since transmigrating, luck has favored me a few times. If it's just one, then I can deal with it." Raze had almost immediately regretted those thoughts. Mata had moved from his position over 5 meters in an instant, but not only that, it looked as if his feet had just glided across the floor. Raze was unable to witness him lifting his legs, which made the whole thing look like an illusion. Before he could prepare any magic, a heavy blow had landed right in his stomach. His feet were lifted off the ground, and he went flying through the air. Raze felt like his insides were about to come out, and food had already left his mouth, dribbling over his clothing as he finally landed a distance away. That hit. Are these disciples stronger than the Red Brigade elders? Raze looked around, getting up from his position, but he was unable to see where Mata was. "You are nothing special. I don't understand why my brother spent so much attention on you," Mata stated. Raze was gathering the magic in his hands again, but before he knew it, a large, heavy kick, it was giving the imagery as if it was flowing through water, bashed into Raze's side. Once again, he was sent flying through the forest, tumbling until he landed on the ground. "I've made a big mistake," Raze thought as he spat out blood from his mouth onto the ground. "I thought as long as I had distance between us, that I would be able to use my magic to finish him off, but why am I struggling to see him so much? How can there be so much of a difference between these guys and the Red Brigade clan? In a way, Raze was lucky to have transmigrated into the town he had. It was a small place with a clan that had next to no significance. Since he had been introduced to the world of Pagna warriors through them, he could only use them as a guide. Sure, he had met Dame and Beatrix, but they were claimed to be at the very pinnacle at the top. There was Jan as well, but if Raze had used magic, maybe he would have been able to do something. Right now, though, he felt completely helpless. As Raze got up off the ground, he noticed the lack of trees that were around him. Looking back, there was just the ground and a cliff that descended into nothing but mist, similar to that which surrounded the entire academy. "Why?" Mata said, appearing in front of Raze and walking slowly toward him. "Why would he acknowledge someone like you, talk to you, when he has never even bothered to say a single word to me?" F***ck me, Raze said as he held his stomach. "Is this what this is about? You're attacking me because you're F***king jealous, and of all things, your brother. If you want to tell him you love him, then go tell him. Don't drag me into your incest **t. Why did it always feel like to Raze that he was put in these difficult situations? When he had nothing, he was forced to do others' bidding against his own will. When he had something, it was taken away from him. When he had power, he was chased by those who feared him. I'm telling you this now," Raze said, as he looked up at Mata with the same eyes he had done before when the rest of the disciples were there. A sharp look that pierced through one's soul. "If you don't kill me, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life." "I already planned to," Mata answered. "I need to see the reaction on my brother's face when you're gone." Raze lifted his hand up in that moment. The dark magic gathered around his palm. "Dark pulse," Raze shouted. The beam of energy shot out, but moving to the side, Mata had avoided it completely, only letting it burn his hair. Shifting forward like he had done before, he sidekicked Raze right in the stomach, lifting him off the floor. Raze could feel his body in free fall, and eventually the edge of the cliff, with Mata looking down at him, was all he could see until he could see nothing but the mist covering his sight. Mata looked down and couldn't hear a loud thud, which suggested it was a long way to the bottom. "He won't be able to survive that, and there will be no evidence of my doing," Mata said as he turned around. When he did, he started to walk back through the forest, and that's when his eyes laid upon a tree. There's a large hole in it, not just through one tree, but it went through 3 trees until it stopped. Was it his doing? Was it that strange attack he pulled at the end? What was that? Was it projectile chi? No, that would be impossible. Only a deity rank can do something like that. So what is this? Mata thought. The edge of the cliff that Raze was able to see had long gone out of his sight, and now it felt like he was endlessly falling down. How deep was he falling off the edge? Surely, even if a Pagna warrior were to fall down here, they too would perish. Why would they have such a cliff in the academy? Do they want students to die? It seems like my experience here might end up being worse than at the Mages Academy. Flashes of imagery appeared in Raze's mind. Surrounded in a large courtroom, surrounded by other mages. His own self standing on trial with cuffs around his wrists. Then finally the image of Iberin covered in fake tears, one of the 5 Grand Magus, and the current head of the Mage Academy. No, the situation back then was far worse than this. This I can handle. Calming himself as he fell, Raze started to gather magic. Over his right hand, swirls of dark purple were weaving in and out, flowing like water. Then over his left arm, the same thing was happening, but it wasn't dark in color. It was clear and almost invisible because Raze was using wind magic as well. "Dark pulse," Raze shouted, and from his hand, the pulse of magic moved the mist out of the way, but it soon moved back, covering it again. After a few seconds, though, he could hear a slight banging sound. "Not yet. I need to time this right." "Dark pulse," Raze called out again, and the attack went through the mist. This time the bang was heard much sooner than before, and when there were only a couple of seconds left. "Dark pulse and the push of wind," Raze shouted. The ground was only around a meter off the floor from where he was, but the dark pulse exploded into the floor, and the wind pushed out of his hand, going against the ground. For a moment, the power of the forces had pushed energy back in the other direction, slowing him down immensely, but the momentum of the fall was still too much to completely stop it. Ray's body slammed onto the floor, and he bounced across the ground. After hitting the floor a few times, his arms smashed against something hard. A cracking sound followed with a short burst of immense pain that quickly faded away due to the adrenaline that was running through his body. But it was clear to Raze that he had broken his arm. Well, at least I'm alive, for now. Raze's eyelids were slowly closing, flickering, but even if they were open anyway, all he could see was a thick mist around him until they eventually closed. The images that flashed in Raze's mind before had turned into reality. He looked down at his arms and could see they were covered in strange cuffs. They were metallic at the top, but then connected by some type of blue energy beam across them. His hands, they were wrinkled compared to what he was used to, and when he looked up, he could see himself in a large courtroom. He was standing in the center, and as he looked up, surrounding him, sitting in stands high above, were hundreds of mages. Raze Cromwell, a verdict has been made. One of the older mages in white and blue robes, with a large mallet in his hand, was sitting at the stand. You have been struck of your title as professor, and your crimes have been added to your record. With this, it will be difficult for you to obtain any job dealing with magic ever again. That is, if you are able to survive a life sentence of 25 years in Affinity Prison. An appeal cannot be made. The dreaded feeling of the whole world of Raze having crashed down after spending so long to build it up. He was reliving that moment again. It all felt so very real to him. Back then, though, he was too shocked to say anything, but this time he could. No, Raze shouted back. It wasn't me. I was tricked. It was all Ibran's doing. Run an investigation. You'll find out the truth. The image was frozen in place. None of them were moving, and just as quickly as he had entered the memory, it smashed like glass, breaking apart into tiny little pieces. Slowly opening his eyes, Raze could see the mist again. Crap, I guess this part wasn't a dream, but the other part was. Well, I would rather be here than there. Thanks for that, brain, for reminding me why I'm putting myself through all of this. With an attempt to move his arm, a shooting pain ran up his entire body. He was sore all over, but reaching and grabbing his arm, applying a bit of pressure, he could move up a bit and was sat up. Standing was still going to be a mammoth of a task, but at least he was no longer on the floor. Thankfully, he had survived the large fall by using what magic he had. If his wind attribute was strong enough, then he could have perhaps floated down peacefully, but instead, he had no choice but to try and guess where the bottom was and summon as much power in the other direction to lessen his fall. Crap, Raze shouted, letting out a bit of his anger. Why, when I'm in a situation like this, does this body start thinking about whether or not she's going to be okay? The image that was appearing in Raze's mind now was of the current sister's body, Sappha. He thought after protecting her a few times and keeping her by his side, this strange compulsion the body had would go away. It somewhat had done, but now that they were apart, there was a tugging feeling in his chest, a feeling he didn't like at all. I know, we still haven't solved the situation with the assassins or found out why our family was killed, so they could still be going after her. But we're in the academy. Things should be okay, and I think we should be worrying about ourselves for now. Eventually, Raze stood on his 2 feet. He had no clue what direction to go in, so he decided to just wander through the mist until he found something. That fight, the disciples, they're stronger than I thought. They have techniques they can use beyond that of other clans. Even if they're a lower stage Pagno warrior, the stages just refer to energy or chi, but not the amount of skills used. I guess there's a bigger relation between star mages and the Pagno warrior stages as well. The statement that it's impossible for a warrior at a higher stage could ever lose to a lower stage isn't true. It only makes sense for those that are in the same clan. If I want to solve this situation, then before going back to the academy, I need to be stronger than those guys. Right now, there are 3 ways I can increase my strength. Increase my power as a Pagno warrior, increase my magic core, or use enchanted items. A combination of these things would be best and would allow for rapid growth for Raze. Eventually, wandering through the mist, Raze had bumped into a solid object. As he pressed his hand against it, he could feel jagged rocks. Is this the cliff? I guess if I walk across it, I should eventually come to see something. Raze did just that. With his hand touching the rocky cliffside, he continued to walk through the mist. That was until his hand slipped, feeling nothing. As he looked to his right where his hand had felled in, he noticed it was a large hole, a giant entrance, in an area where the mist wasn't heading inside for some reason. Is this some type of cave entrance? I am exhausted, and rest for a bit wouldn't be such a bad idea. If things don't work out, I always have another plan anyway. Raze thought to himself. Walking into the cave, there were parts of the wall that were lit up with small, strange, glowing green bugs. They looked more like worms as they wiggled, but allowed for Raze to see where he was going. Thankfully, if he was going to sleep inside, none of the bugs seemed to be on the floor. Looking at the wall with the wiggling bugs, though, he noticed something. It was writing that was engraved on the wall. Oh, so I guess someone else was down here as well. Probably another student that they kicked off the cliff and managed to survive, Raze said, as the idea didn't seem too far-fetched. When he looked at the writing closer, he noticed that he could read it, but a realization had hit him. Wait, this isn't Pagna writing. The writing on the wall, it's Altarian writing. For a moment, Raze felt like a fool, for he was too focused on the glowing bugs rather than the writing on the wall. But he did feel like he could forgive himself a little. The writing was carved into the rock, and there was a reason why he had failed to notice the writing on the wall. Having transmigrated into a new body, Raze already knew how to speak and read the Pagna language. He had been doing so instinctively with everything he saw, including the cultivation books that had been given to him. He hadn't been reading the words and then translating them in his head. He just knew what they were. It had been so long since he had seen the Altarian language that, at first, it looked just like random scribbles. Taking a step back, he noticed that they were letters, and he could see that entire passages had been carved out onto the wall. It made him think for a moment if he was on Altarian, but he knew that was foolish. How long has this been on here? Raze grazed his finger along the indentation. He noticed that the words were a similar width to his own index finger. This, along with the rounded edges of the words, made him believe that such a thing was done with a finger. I can't believe it. Here in the dark faction at the bottom of some cavern, there is Altarian writing. Even if other students were sent down here, they wouldn't be able to decipher this, nor could the Pagna warriors, Raze said. It wasn't completely out of the realm of possibility. After all, Raze had met other Altarians in Pagna. It was just with how worn the writing looked, it felt like this had been left behind in another era. Raze decided to continue to follow the writing until he had come to the end of the cave. It wasn't very deep, but it was quite spacious toward the end, as large as a wealthy man's bedroom. Looking at the writing all over, Raze was trying to find a starting point, and at the very bottom, toward the center, it looked like he had found it. I have come to the realization that I might perish down here. I have done a lot since coming to this world, and since I know what I've done might not be recorded down in books, I have decided to at least make a log of what I have done down here. The writing at times was hard for Raze to make out since a lot of it was faded. At times he would have to trace his finger to figure out what letter was meant to be there. Due to the age of when it was written, some of the passages were completely illegible. This world was a dangerous one when I joined, and I have seen no signs of others like me. I decided to forget my old ways as a mage and became a Pagna warrior. I found people I cared about, that I wanted to protect. We decided to form a group and named it the Dark Faction. They designated me as their leader. Raze had gone over the last piece of text a few times with his finger, tracing it over and over again to make sure he had read it right, but he was certain that there were no mistakes. The creation of the Dark Faction was created by an Altarian. It wasn't originally a Pagna warrior. Wait, but how far back does this go then? Surely, the Dark Faction must have existed for thousands of years. Have people been going to this world since back then? Thinking about the Dark Faction leader, Raze started to remember the statue that Crone had in his temple. It had a man in robes, just like what mages wore. It was something Raze had always found strange, since it wasn't the regular clothing of those from Pagna. He had seen it everywhere, even on the streets. It was becoming more likely that the words written in the cave weren't just some ramblings of a mad mage. It seems they have found me and found out what I really am. Portals have started to open up. Is this their doing, or is it just a crazy coincidence? I need to do more investigating, but I'm afraid it will put a target on my back. The words, what I really am, Raze could guess they were referring to him being a mage. But who was looking for him? Was it Alter? Did such a group exist back then? Or was it some other type of group? What Raze was more concerned about was the fact that he was worried about them. The leader of the entire Dark faction, and possibly one of the strongest at the time in Pagna. Another thing was the link to portals. Raze already knew that portal openings were linked to magic. So how did the first ones come to be? Was it also an Alterian's doing? Or was it something that had just happened? Reading on, Raze was hoping he could find more, but there wasn't much information apart from the last few logs written toward the entrance of the cave. They have infiltrated the Dark faction, the group that I built up with my dear friends. Now I can't trust any of them. This is the only place left, the only place I can hide that they don't know about. Ray's heart started to beat a little stronger. He could feel the worry through the words written, even if the writing was a little shaky. It was a sign that he was truly afraid, a person who had lost everything. The magic that I abandoned is now the only hope I have left. Where their eyes don't see me. I never thought I would have to rely on those crazy people, but it's the only choice that I have. There I will be safe. Finally, Raze had reached the last legible passage. I have created a formation to come back to this place. When I have what I need, I will return and take back what is rightfully mine. The words resonated well with Raze. He was starting to have a good impression of this Dark faction leader, even though he had never met him before. By its side, he noticed something else that didn't really click compared to before. Because of the words written, the grooves in the wall, they weren't just random. As he followed them along with his finger, it was as Raze expected. This is a magic circle, and not just that, by the formation, it's a portal. Judging by what was written, this is a portal for him to return to this very cave. I don't know much about the Dark faction history. I never bothered to learn much about it, since I was focused on my own goals. So I have no clue what is written in the history books about the Dark faction leader. Did he ever come back and accomplish what he needed to do? There was a lot of meaning hidden behind all the words, and Raze wanted to take them seriously because right now he was in the same situation, and it felt like he was following in that person's footsteps, even to the point where he had fallen in the cave. With the formation, Raze ran over it with his finger, and this time he was paying attention with every stroke of his finger. As a mage, over the years, remembering formations got a little simpler to remember. It was somewhat like a musician learning a new song. Over time, one would learn what chords were used and how they were repeated in song structures. Just like how one could then learn songs a lot quicker, it was the same with the magic formation. After around 30 minutes of repeating the same thing over and over, Raze had gotten the formation memorized. This is a formation to return to this cave. Not that there is anything left in here that I need, but it will be handy to have if there is the need to hide somewhere in the future. Raze still had his cloak, and he still had 2 power stones. One was for the robe itself, and the other was to return to the location where Dame would be. He always thought it would be a good place to hide, if need be. Looking around in the cave further, Raze was double-checking to see if there was anything else he had missed, but he had gone through all of the walls. That's when some of the glowing worms that were on the side of the walls and ceiling had dropped down. Moving to the side, Raze had easily avoided them, but he could now see that the ground had lit up. Is this? Moving his foot, he could feel an indent in the ground too. Wait a second. Raze swung his arm in the air, activating his wing magic briefly, causing several of the worms to fall on the ground. Now that it was lit up, his suspicions were true. There's another formation on the ground. It's different from the one on the wall, but it's another teleporter formation. The words from the passage appeared in Raze's head. I never thought I would have to rely on those crazy people, but it's the only choice that I have. There I will be safe. Just where did this portal lead to, and what was Raze to do? Simeon had run back through the forest with Safa on his back. He had seen a couple of hop bunnies running through the forest and heard the sound of other students trying to fight the beasts, but he had decided to ignore them all. There were even those that seemed to be fighting against each other already, attempting to steal the power stones from each other. I just can't see it. I just can't see how Raze will beat those guys on their own. Simeon thought. Playing in his head were each of the disciples going after him. Raze using his strange magic, but failing at every corner. It just wasn't possible, even with his powers. He had the chance to help out, but had decided not to. It was all because Raze was the one that had given him the order. He thought there was no reason for both of them to get hurt. Even with the two of them, it wouldn't have changed the situation anyway. So the best thing to do was to do as the disciples said and betray them. That way at least they got the rewards. While having this thought in his mind, Simeon opened his hand. There were 2 power stones that had been given to him by Richter in turn for helping him out, for turning Raze in. Right now, they felt so dirty, and he wanted to just chuck them away, but that would have been a waste. I have to listen to Raze. I promised I would do as he said, and right now, I need to protect Sappha as well. The 2 of them had eventually made it back to the starting zone and were standing in front of the large doors. There was no one else around. There was still plenty of time until the assessment was to end. Looking into the forest, Simeon was just hoping that he would see Raze pop out of it, with the usual sucky look on his face, or with an insult, but no such thing had happened. Sappha's eyes started to open, and as soon as she was conscious, she shot right up like a bamboo shoot. Twisting and turning her head, she was only looking for one thing. Her eyes started to tear up as she ran towards Simeon, who had grabbed her by the wrist before she could hit him. I know, I'm sorry, Simeon said. I wanted to stay and help him as well. I didn't want to leave him, but Raze told me to go. He told me to look after you as well, Sappha. He did that for our sake, so if we were to go back or try to fight against them, then it would all be in vain. Let's just wait and see. I'm sure he's okay. Sappha continued to sulk and fell to her knees. She was losing energy inside her. Simeon, seeing her like this, felt like they perhaps both felt the same way, that they were incredibly weak and powerless in this situation. They had felt this way before, but at least they had managed to do something when Crone was in trouble. But here they were able to do nothing. The 2 of them waited and waited. Hours passed, and there was no sign of Raze. What had occurred was students returning. Some of them were standing a few meters away, near the entrance, and others still clearly inside the forest. It was like Raze had mentioned. They were waiting to ambush those that had already collected a large number of power stones. What soon had occurred were fights that were breaking out, and even fights at the starting area as well. Yet for some reason, not a single person had decided to mess with them too. Is it because they don't think we have any power stones, so there's no point fighting us? Or is this the main clan disciples doing? Simeon had yet to see them arrive, and a misty gray was appearing over the forest. The sun was soon to rise. Eventually, the fighting had stopped between students. There were even those that had made deals to give some of their crystals rather than take a beating against each other and fight. Finally, the 5 main disciples had arrived, and they had done so together. However, there was no sign of Raze with them. Sappha stood up and immediately went toward them, but Simeon quickly grabbed her hand. Hold it in, Simeon said. Please hold it in. Right now, we're not strong enough. I know, you want to get revenge, but now is not the time. I promise you, I will protect you and help you in any way I can to get what you want. In order to stop Sappha from making any loud noises, Simeon had to hold her head to his chest. He did so firmly. It was the only thing he could do for her, hoping that if she at least didn't look at them, her anger would be calmed. When the 5 disciples walked past, Richter gave a smile to him, and it was then that even Simeon couldn't take it anymore. What happened to him? What did you do? Where is he? Simeon asked. The other main disciples continued to move closer to the door, while Mata stopped. That white-haired kid. Turns out he was nothing special after all. Walking away, Simeon bit his bottom lip so hard that he had pierced it with his tooth, and blood was starting to drip down his chin. The door opened as the sun rose in the air, and Pincer and Gunther had come out. The sight they could see in front of them was an expected one. Many of the students were injured, but not so much that they couldn't walk. Pagna warriors were skilled enough to tell after a few exchanges who would win a fight, so they would quickly give up the crystals, which was why all of the students were able to head back toward the entrance. That was all apart from one. Gunther was scanning the area. He could see Simeon and Sappha, but where was the white-haired student? Where was Raze? Hey, Gunther asked, approaching both Simeon and Sappha. The other one, did he not come back with you? Simeon shook his head. No, he got lost on the way. It wasn't a smart move for Simeon to tell the examiners it was the main disciple's doing. It might have sounded as if he was trying to get them in trouble, making it harder for their lives to continue at the academy. Pincer, I'm going to look for someone. Gunther shouted. You start to collect the crystals. Pincer did as asked, while Gunther rushed into the forest. After all the crystals were tallied up, the students were told to head inside where they would be told where they were staying and where they could finally rest. The result of today's events would be revealed later. Mata took one look back into the forest, imagining his brother searching all over the place for a no-name. Truly pathetic, he has no right to be the next clan head. Gunther looked everywhere he could in the forest. He truly searched up and down, through all the fighting areas, but he was unable to find anything. Was it the main disciples doing? Did they decide to get rid of him? If it was them, even if the academy had found out it was their doing, then they wouldn't punish them much since he was a no-name, Gunther thought. Maybe it was the best for him to have gone. With that chi circulating in his body, there's a chance he could have turned crazy at any point, Gunther thought, as he decided to return. Following along with the other students being helped by the staff, Simeon continued to walk, following them through the halls, and he noticed that he had caught the eye of Richter a few times. Every time they did make eye contact, he would deliver a strange smile to him. I thought as much, now that I have done as he asked. He won't let me go. He hasn't finished his fun with me. Instinctively, Simeon went ahead and rubbed the bottom of his earring, and he remembered the last thing Raze had done before the assessment had started. Raze had placed his hand on the earring, and a strange darkness had surrounded his hands, entering the earring. This time, if someone messes with you, they will be in for quite the surprise, Raze said. Raze had decided to sit down on the hard, cold surface of the cavern floor, right where the magic circle had been drawn. He thought that maybe if he did this, he could picture himself more in the shoes of the Dark Faction leader. The magic circle most likely opens up a portal to the land of the crazies the Dark Faction leader was talking about. I still have no idea whether or not he was able to return or not either, so there's a chance that the place is an extremely dangerous one, Raze thought. His legs were crossed, his eyes were closed, and he was in a meditative state. His wounds were still quite bad on his body, and although he had the body of a Pagna warrior, it wasn't something that would just heal unless given a long period of time. With my body in this state, if this is a portal to a dangerous dimension with strong beasts, then I'll be in a lot of trouble. I'm someone who has taken many risks in my life, and although I feel like I should follow where the Dark Faction leader went, there is a much safer option. Pushing off with his two legs, Raze kicked off the ground and, without using his arms, got up from the floor. It was something he never imagined he could do as a mage or in his old body. With his broken arm, he would have been far more doomed before compared to now. I guess that's decided. If I stay here, then nothing will change. I have to do something about my body first, and then find ways to improve my strength. Raze moved from a circle that was underneath him, and just ahead, he was trying to find his own space to draw a circle of his own. He looked back at the inscriptions on the walls. It was clear that they were all done with a finger, something that Raze couldn't do as a Stage 1 Pagna warrior. It made him wonder if perhaps he would be able to do something like this at some point. It was clear the Dark Faction leader was skilled at being a warrior, and it made Raze wonder what his skills were like as a mage as well. Since he was unable to do the same thing, he needed to improvise. Off the wall, Raze picked up one of the glowing worms. It wriggled in his fingers. It was fat and juicy in size. Placing it on the floor, he crushed its body against the ground quickly to ensure it didn't suffer a slow death and began to draw his magic circle. My life is at stake, and who knows what will be happening to others. I can't be worrying about the deaths of some bugs. It took more than one bug, as the green fluorescent liquid that would come out of it was small in amount. Eventually, the magic circle was complete. I have 2 crystals on me, one for getting there, Raze thought, looking at the other circle that had been written on the cave wall. And if that works, one for getting back here as well. Placing the power stone on the ground, Raze activated the magic circle, and the portal opened up. Taking a confident step in, Raze appeared on the other side, in a dimension of darkness. The portal then snapped shut behind him, leaving him in the dimension. I'm in a different area compared to last time. The Dark Mage was in unfamiliar territory, but he did have some idea of where he was. To his left and right, there were multiple square-shaped buildings. Most of them had been damaged with rubble falling from the top or side. They even had doors, but again, they were broken down or completely destroyed. What it looked like he was on was a very wide street that was between the two rows of houses. These streets could be seen every so often between the houses. Trying to make a note of the area, he also noticed that there was a well behind him. Far ahead in front, though, there was a large, thick wall. It had been torn down in multiple places, but what was amazing about it was how far it stretched along all of the houses. This was the familiar place Raze had noticed from before, the city he had seen on the other side of the building he was in with Dame. I used the same formation that I did last time, but because I drew it in a different place, it's taken me to a different location, which is why I'm a bit skeptical about that circle in the cave. The magic circle in the cave had the makings of a teleportation circle, but there were markings that Raze himself didn't understand, small numbers that were written. It was a first for Raze. He had hoped that those small numbers meant that he would be sent to the same spot no matter where he was. Either way, he had chosen to travel to this dimension, the one where he had met Dame, because he knew the level of beast was low. It was a good place for him to get some crystals. The first thing Raze had decided to do was get out of the open street. He had never been on this side of the wall, where the city was. There was a chance there could be more groups of beasts or beasts he had never encountered before. The first thing he did was decide to enter one of the houses. Here he could see the usual furniture spread out, old toys that were rusted and broken apart. These dimensions, sometimes they are a world full of nothing but sand, and at other times, it's as if an entire civilization once lived here. Yet we have never found signs of the original inhabitants' life. I guess Pagna will be a first, but no one on Altria knows about that. Why is Pagna so different? The question interests me, but I can't look into it so much. I need to focus on my own doings. There's one thing that is different about me and the Dark Faction leader. He had decided to make a life and settle down in Pagna. He was more concerned about taking what he had made in Pagna, whereas I have no intention of that. Raze went through the broken rubble of one of the doors and crossed over into the other house where the wall had broken down as well. In the corner, he could see red, glowing eyes, and without hesitation, he pointed his one good arm outward. Dark Pulse. The attack left his hand, and a small whimper followed before a thud. The mist went into his body, and going over, Raze could see that it was the same dog creatures as before. Before taking out the crystal from its body, Raze decided to check the rest of the house. The last thing he wanted was for a beast to jump out at him while he was hesitating. When he went up the stairs, he saw two more, and he turned from one to the other using Dark Pulse on them again. They were easily dealt with. After checking the area a second time, Raze took the crystals out of the three beasts, and now he had 3 level 1 power stones to work with. Before, when I went to this dimension, I had a time limit of how long I could be here. I only had enough crystals to do what I needed, but this time I can do everything I need to. With the blood of the beasts, Raze drew out a magic circle and placed down a crystal along with the bottle. He activated it with his magic and decided to use his dark magic for what he wanted this time. The liquid filled the bottle, but rather than light blue, it came out red instead. That's okay, Raze thought. He picked up the bottle and, opening the lid, started to gulp it down. With this body, I don't just have to rely on my magic. Raze placed the bottle down again, along with another power stone on the ground. He could feel it working as a tingling sensation was sent around his body. Some of the aches and pains were disappearing, but his arm was still in somewhat bad condition. This was followed by his mana being somewhat drained. He could have made a normal potion, but Raze wanted his body back in the old shape it was. I have a lot more things I need to make, so I'm going to need a lot more crystals. It's time for me to hunt. A healing potion wasn't on the list of things that Raze was planning to create first. This was because, for a mage, they were relatively quite useless. Mages didn't have strong bodies. Instead, they used magic to fortify themselves or create defensive barriers, counters, and many more. If an attack from a mage managed to get through, it would mean the end for them in battle. Hence, potions weren't directly used on mages, but were something that existed for the general public. In this case, though, a potion was extremely helpful. Apagno warriors suffered from internal and external wounds, and they were able to withstand their fair share of punishment. It made Raze think, similar to how, when mages fought, they would constantly consume mana potions to aid them. A Pagna warrior could consume health potions in the middle of battle. The basic one that Raze had created wouldn't be of much use. Even now, he had to consume several to get back to his original state, but stronger ones would be ideal. For Raze, who was both a Pagna warrior and a mage, it would do well for him to keep both. The cursed effect of a healing potion didn't matter much to Raze either, since he could create a regular mana potion afterward. Now that he had the wind attribute, he could use magic other than that of dark magic to create potions. An uncommon mana potion has been created. A small amount of mana has been replenished. Casting speed of spells will be increased for the next 5 seconds. Since the mana potion was created with wind magic, it didn't restore as much mana as one created with dark magic, but it had a nice effect. The casting speed doesn't matter much for basic spells like Dark Pulse, but for the higher tier spells that require more mana, it will come in handy. For now, Raze would continue to go through the ruined city and collect beast crystals. Every other building there seemed to have 1 or 2 of the dog beasts, and the most he would come across was 4. He repeated the process of making the mana potions and the healing potions until his whole body was back to what it once was. His broken arm had healed, and his whole body felt refreshed. He even jumped up and down and threw a few punches in the air. Having used up his crystals, Raze continued his strategy of going through the houses. It seemed to help him not get surrounded or ambushed. He saw one of the dog beasts growling at him, and immediately it leaped towards him. Rather than using the dark pulse as he normally would do, the air was swirling around his hand. Silent strike, Raze whispered as he performed the 2-step shift. He had gathered the chi in his body, but rather than a fist, he had his fingers together pointed outward. He swung it across the dog's neck, and it sliced it open. Even with skills like Silent Strike, if I utilize it with chi, it makes it stronger. With the next set of beasts that Raze hunted, he had used mainly Silent Strike along with a few other wind attribute skills. He did his best to only use wind attribute magic unless he was put in a dangerous situation. With the effect of the dark magic ring, Raze was gaining back his mana with each kill, and since Silent Strike used up nothing, he could seemingly go on forever. In the end, he ended up with 16 level 1 power stones before he decided to take a break. He was inside one of the homes he had just recently cleared again, checking what he had in his robe. Now that he was in another dimension, he was wearing his robe freely, since here, if anyone spotted him, he wanted to be known as the Dark Magus. The reason Raze had been using the wind magic to fight against the beasts was that he wanted to improve its attribute. When he could, he wished to enchant another ring with wind magic. It wouldn't be cursed, so there would be no downside, but it would allow him to keep better track of the ring. Since I didn't really prepare coming to this place, I only prepared 4 bottles. Raze was thinking about the best thing to do. The healing potions weren't effective enough to use on the go, so in battle, it would be practically useless. So instead, Raze had decided to create a couple more mana potions. 1 uncommon wind-based mana potion. 2 uncommon cursed mana potions. With the stage he was at now, the cursed potions were more effective if he got into trouble. However, he was sure that with a potion with that powerful of an effect, it was something that perhaps couldn't be used consecutively one after another. Not that it was something one would want to do unless they wanted to suffer from mana poisoning. With the last bottle on the ground, Raze had decided to create an entirely new magic formation. He wanted a new type of potion, and when the spell was finally cast, it was filled with green liquid. A common buff potion has been created. Increase the user's speed slightly for 10 seconds. This is something that dark magic is unable to produce, a complete buff potion for the user. Or at least not one that has been discovered yet, although I would hate to think what the downsides would be. With the potions created, he had stored them inside his robe. It was time for him to continue hunting once again. He could increase his wind attribute, and although level 1 stones were pretty much not useful to him any longer, he could always sell them for a pretty penny. Exiting out of the house, Raze had entered onto the wide street, the road that led up to the large wall. He had been getting closer to it bit by bit. If he didn't want to use the formation he had seen in the cave, he could always go to the place he was at before and use the formation he did know. It would send him back to the temple, but at least it was a sure way for him to return. There would be a few questions he suspected for him if he did that, though. "Hey!" A voice shouted out, and it sounded as if it was from above. "This isn't our meeting day. What are you doing here on your own? You should be careful. Otherwise, you might get taken out like the first time we met." When Raze looked up, he could see a group of people on top of one of the houses. It wasn't just any group of people. It was Dame along with his small squad. This might not be a bad time to meet, actually. Raze thought, "I need to know whether or not he's from the demonic faction, and what does that even mean? Just what kind of cultivation technique did I learn, and whether or not it would bring him trouble." Dame was part of the Neverfall clan, and the clan had a certain set of rules, especially when it came to portal use, as other dimensions were not only dangerous places but also valuable resources. The main issue with portals, though, was that they were placed all over the continent. They didn't know where the portals would open up, and when they did, they would permanently stay open in a certain location, which was why portals that opened up near a clan base were a blessing. It was easier for them to protect it from other users. If it wasn't a valuable portal and was far away, it didn't make sense for clans to focus a lot of manpower on such a thing. There were other reasons for restricting the number of clans down to a minimum, and that was because portals could be cleared as well. It was a strange phenomenon that they didn't quite understand, but certain events could occur inside a dimension, and once those events passed, the portal would close as well. In most cases, they would attempt to keep the portals open since they supplied the world of Pagna with special power stones that could be converted into cheap pills, and in some cases, there would be rare plants that could be used by alchemists as well. Because of this, Dame and his small group of followers, friends, a group of people that were hard to describe even if you asked about them himself, would journey out of the Neverfall base and head to the border of the continent. They were traveling through a barren wasteland where the ground beneath them was a dark orange, almost black. Strangely up ahead, there was a mountain where half of it on one side was covered with snow while the other covered in the same dark surface they were walking on. Although walking wasn't quite the right word, they were taking large steps, and with each step, it looked like they were gliding across the land. They weren't running, but they were covering several meters of distance with just a single step, and none of them looked tired either. "Dame, I thought you said you were going to stop using this portal. We are already on the bad side of the Light faction, and I don't think your father can keep sticking up for you," Fixteen said, annoyed. "Oh, come on," Dame replied back. "Do you really think they care about this portal so much? If they did, they would have placed some guards on the outside. The fact that they haven't and abandoned it is proof that it's free to use." Kirk was shaking his head. "But isn't that why we got in trouble? Because Beatrix was in the portal? It is technically owned by the Light faction after all. And are we fighting against them?" Dame replied, "We're just collecting power stones that otherwise would have never been collected. We have been in this portal how many times, and we've only come across her once, so it's no big deal. And besides, we need to look after this portal, because it's our only connection with him, with the Dark Magus." Dame and his group had been visiting the portal to collect power stones. They would then sell them on the black market for coin, and with the coin, they would spend it all on booze, food, drink, and he had become well known as a frequent visitor of the several brothels around the place. It was safe to say that Dame had a bad reputation in the Neverfall clan. He continued to visit the portal, obtaining low-level power stones, but he also would make sure to arrive on a certain day. Today wasn't one of those days. When they had arrived at the top of the mountain, the portal could be seen halfway down the other side of the mountain. It was in a tricky place to begin with, and there was even a blizzard that was taking place. After observing that there was no one present around the area, nor could they see any footsteps in the snow, they rushed over and entered the portal one by one. Coming out on the other side, the group was in a dark, large hallway. They were at the very top floor of the large wall that separated the two sides. One side led into a dark forest, and on the other side was the city. Immediately, Dame and his group entered the city, and they started to search around, looking for beasts. They knew the place was no trouble for them. It was part of the reason why they came here, because it was meant to be easy unless they ran into someone. As they searched through buildings, they started to witness a few things, though. Holy crap, Carlson said as he knelt over and pulled out a dagger by his side. He was right by one of the dog beasts and started to carve at it immediately. He was searching to see its center, and he could see that the power stone had already been removed. I guess that someone else is here after all, Kirk said, wiping the sweat from his bald head. Although he was a Pagna warrior, he was a relatively unfit one with a large belly. 16 immediately went to look at Dame when they noticed that it wasn't just one dead beast, but there were several. Oh, come on, Dame complained. Just because there are dead beasts here doesn't mean that it's going to be Beatrix. It could be wanderers who stumbled upon the portal, or it could just be some low-level light faction members. We could just stay out of their sight if we see them. Fixteen didn't like the careless answer from Dame, but he felt like he was right. They were all skilled Pagna warriors. It made no sense for them to be here either, let alone light faction members. Beatrix was simply a one-off. As the group continued to explore, they were coming across more and more of the dead beasts. All of them seemed to be killed in the same way, a strike right by their neck as well. It was clear it was a one-sided fight. Are these strikes done by a sword? Does that mean Beatrix is really here? Carlson said nervously. No, it won't be her, Dame answered. She is a treasure of the light faction. Unlike me, these power stones are not even worth her taking her time to carve out the beasts. Not only that, but with how many dead beasts are in the area, there's a chance that if they keep killing them like this, the Dimension Boss will be summoned again like last time. The Dimension Boss was one of the events that could occur in a portal. It was a beast that was abnormally strong compared to those within the portal, and a large group would be used to subjugate it. Once defeated, the portal would close up. This was why clan members were strict with those who entered the portals. Carlson was shaking, and he started to feel a phantom pain in his leg as he went to grab it. One of the times they had entered before, the Dimension Boss had been summoned, and Carlson had been on the receiving end. Hey, I think I just found our culprit, Dame said, standing on the rooftop and seeing a young man in dark robes. Having met Dame and his group twice already, Raze wasn't so afraid of them, but he still stood on the side of caution. Unlike the past, he didn't activate his magic, ready to use it at a moment's notice. Besides, who would call out to their opponent if they were planning to attack them anyway? I guess that woman from the Light faction would do that. I wonder if all of those from the Light faction are just as strange. Dame and the rest had jumped down from the rooftops, and they had a smile on their faces. He was quite pleased to see the Dark Magus because now he knew who the mysterious person behind the beast killings was. They had less reason to worry about running into those from the Light faction now. It isn't our time to meet, so I have to be honest. I'm quite surprised to see you here, Dame said. Do I have to have your permission to be here? Raze immediately replied. No, you are quite right, but I thought that you might be worried about running into a few problems like the time before. Anyway, a meeting with you is always a pleasure. Is there anything specific that you're looking for in here? Perhaps me and my group can help. Dame offered. It had been a long time, an incredibly long time, since Raze had worked with another group. Although he had Safa and Simeon by his side, he imagined them as just add-ons that were following him. However, Raze was actually hoping to meet Dame because he had quite a few questions he wanted to ask him. I actually wanted to ask you something, Raze said as he made a fist, gathering his chi from his dantian, and then threw it out. It looked like a strong blow, but there were no ripples in the air, nor was there a loud bang, somewhat showing what stage he was at. Oh, Dame clapped his hands together in surprise. It looks like the gift I gave you last time actually managed to help you. I'll be honest, I'm actually surprised you were able to learn this, and so fast. The others were quite concerned seeing this as well. How could they teach an outsider their arts? I assume you want to build a relationship with me, Raze stated, and I have grown quite interested in these arts. So I wanted to ask about this power. Where does it come from? What type of power is it in your world? And is there more to it? A smile appeared on Dame's face as he went on to explain to Raze about the power of chi. He had pretty much told the Dark Magus what he already knew about how there were different stages, a dantian, and chi. He also went on to explain how the source of one's chi was different depending on what cultivation technique people used. Some of them were better at drawing energy than others, and in the conversation, Raze had found the answer he was looking for. The power that you have cultivated is from the demonic faction, so you now have demonic chi running through your body. You're able to learn whatever skills you wish in terms of martial arts. But clans from the demonic faction have perfected their skills to be used with demonic chi best. Raze was quite happy that Dame had chosen not to hide this fact, but it could have been just because he assumed Raze was from another world. Either way, he would use this to get all the information he needed. So, if I have demonic chi in my body, is there anything I should worry about? Raze asked. Dame chuckled. I guess the name demonic does make it sound a tad dangerous, doesn't it? But as you can see, all of us are friendly people. Dame then let out a sigh. If you were from our world, you would have to worry about the other factions. They have a grudge against us due to what happened in the past. You see, demonic chi is special compared to the others for two reasons. The first is the fact that the demonic chi cultivation technique allows the user to grow the quickest. What may take 10 years for other factions, our members can do in 1 year. However, the demonic chi, if not properly regulated, can turn one into literal demons. The color of one's skin will change, their eyes turning into solid black. I'm sure you felt it when you cultivated. The cycle of life and death allows us to connect with them. If one doesn't have a strong mind, which needs to be built up, it will take over one's body. Unfortunately, a long time ago, our clan leader had become a demon and had nearly gotten rid of all of the factions, including our own, but I don't think it's anything you have to worry about. After hearing the story, Raze now didn't know what to think of Dame. He had nonchalantly handed him such a book without explaining any of the details to him. Perhaps, due to his past experiences, he didn't feel as affected by cultivating this way. But if it was another, it could have driven them to go mad. He also believed that the other factions had a right to be worried about the chi if it was dangerous, but it somehow suited him well. A chi cultivation technique that others deemed too dangerous, just like his dark magic as well. Ah, that reminds me, while I have you, the potion that you gave me last time. The effects were splendid, and I actually have a client that would like to purchase more of it from you. Is that possible? Dame asked, rubbing his hands. He was already imagining the riches he would receive from Alba. Creating potions wasn't a difficult task for Raze, and since they were all made with level 1 power stones, these were the basic of basic potions. So he saw no problem, as he would keep the better stuff for himself. Perhaps he could even ask for higher level power stones for doing such a thing for Dame. I can create more for you, but I would need to gather more materials, and I'm in a bit of a tricky situation back where I am in terms of getting them. Besides, if it worked, don't you owe me a reward? Raze asked. The book from before had helped him out leaps and bounds, and perhaps Dame could teach him more, teach him enough to protect himself from the other disciples. Dame had his finger on his chin, tapping it several times until he snapped his fingers. I have an idea. Unfortunately, as you said, I don't have a reward for you since this was an unexpected meeting. However, maybe I have a solution that could solve your material problem and my gift. Hearing Dame speak, Fixteen's heart was starting to thump faster. No, he isn't going to. Don't tell me he is. He wouldn't be that crazy, right? Why don't you come back with us? Come back to our world of Pagna. Dame asked. Fixteen felt that the fact they were already keeping a large secret, that they had met someone from another world, a human with strange powers, was already a significant risk. The elders of the clan, if they had found out what Dame was doing, would have enough reason to punish him for treason, since he had withheld world-changing event information from them. But I know that Dame is just a fool. Fixteen slapped the top of his head. All that damn young master thinks of is ways to earn more money. He just wants to earn enough so he can be free from the clan's restraints and do his own thing. Which was why inviting the very thing they were trying to hide over to their world seemed like an extremely bad idea in his head. Go with him to the world of Pagna? Dame doesn't know I'm from the world of Pagna, but if he's asking me to come with him, then wouldn't that mean taking me to the demonic faction territory? Raze thought. It is a place that I thought I should visit at some point, since it's away from the eyes of Altar. If I'm there, maybe I can do what I need to do. Okay, Raze answered. Let's see this world of yours. Dame's eyes had almost become gold coins. If he could utilize Raze and his special power well, he could make a fortune, and for now, he would hold off introducing him to Alba. He was sure that if the Dark Magus became an even bigger deal, she would raise the bounty on his head, and when the time was right, he would receive the reward. Currently, the rest of the group led the Dark Magus and Dame out of the place. With excitement, they didn't even care about hunting any more beasts except for Raze. The moment he spotted one of the beasts, he would break off from the others. Rather than using his wind magic, though, he stuck to his dark magic to not show his Pagna skills too much. A large hole would be made right through the beast's head, and all that was left was to gather the crystals. Since Raze was doing all of the work getting the crystals in the first place, no one said anything to him about taking them. Are power stones also useful in your world? Dame asked. Yes, Raze replied. The stones are what allow us to make the potions and also make strong items. Oh really? Dame said, sounding a bit surprised. So, does that mean you could make a sword that could shoot out dark beams like what you just did now? The level of stuff I can make would depend on the mage's power, as well as the power stones that could be used. So it wouldn't be completely impossible, Raze explained. He continued to defeat beast after beast, collecting the crystal. Raze had a lot that he wanted to do before he even thought about returning to the academy, and the others in Dame's group were becoming a little concerned, especially Carlson, who was touching his leg again as it ached. Reaching the wall, the group started to go through the halls and up the stairs. It was quite the journey since the staircase would be located on either end of the long hallway. So if one went up one end, they would then have to walk across to the next. Finally, they reached the very top floor, and across the hall, Raze could see the portal. That's interesting. Is this how you get out? Raze asked. Oh, is how you enter into this dimension different from how we got in? I thought it would be the case, but I wasn't completely sure. For us, there's only one way to enter into this dimension. For some reason, a portal will open up somewhere in our world. When we enter into that portal, we always end up in the same place. People can return back through the same portal that they entered from. Or another way to return is by something called a return stone. It will take you back from where you originally entered when crushed, but they are quite expensive, and I have no idea what would happen to you if you were to use one. Almost immediately, a question had come to Raze's mind, and he had asked it without a second thought. Then how do portal breaks happen? Raze wanted to kick himself. He was so used to the world of Pagna and being around other warriors that he had naturally asked the question he was curious about. But they didn't have portal breaks in Altarian, and if they did, wouldn't it have been something he would have known about? It looks like your world hasn't solved that mystery yet either, huh? Dame said, beasts, for some reason, are unable to go through the portal, and they can only do so when a portal breaks open. There's an exception to that. Hybrids can come out at times as well. As for why, who knows? The group continued heading forward, and as they were approaching the portal, another beast dog appeared. Quickly, Raze had used his Dark Pulse skill on it and killed the beast instantly. He rushed over to extract the crystal from its body, as he had been doing. I hope you know not to show your strange powers when you're in our world, Fixteen stated. Of course, Raze replied, obtaining the crystal. Magic used in other dimensions didn't open more portals, at least according to Altar, so there was no problem with that. It was only in Pagna that he had to be careful. When standing up, Raze nearly fell on his backside, as the whole ground was shaking. Several of the loose rocks that were part of the wall fell off to the side. A loud rumbling noise was heard in the distance as well. What was that? Raze asked. That is our cue to get out of here, Fixteen said as he rushed forward. He knew they had dealt with far too many beasts. All of them jumped through quickly with Dame at the very back. Come on, don't be shy, let's go, Dame shouted. Raze jumped through, following the others, and soon Dame had followed just after. As the group exited from the portal, they found themselves landing in the snow. It was clear to Raze that this wasn't any place he was familiar with at all. He was unable to see anything he recognized. Hey, you have chi, right? So you're going to have to try and keep up with us as best you can. The last thing we want to do is leave you behind if we're getting chased, Fixteen said. Chased? Raze asked. Hey, Dame, Kirk shouted, interrupting the two. Take a look at the snow. In the soft white snow that was still falling, they could see that there were a group of footsteps leading from the bottom of the mountain towards the portal. Since the imprints were still visible, it meant it was fairly recent. The Dimension Boss, it was just summoned, Kirk said. If we enter now, we will just get in more trouble, Dames said. They're not from the demonic faction. Besides, we have an important guest to look after. Let's go. Raze followed along as the Pagno warriors ran off. They were fast, and he imagined they were moving slower just because of him. Still, Raze couldn't help but wonder just what were they talking about, and what was he about to see in the demonic faction. The group, plus an extra guest, was now descending on the other side of the mountain. Raze was looking at the dark orange ground, a stark difference from the snowy area they had just come from. The whole area, it looks demonic itself. I wonder if that has something to do with their name. Even the Dark Faction is a place that is just full of regular land, well apart from the Academy, Raze thought. He was keeping up with the others, but he could tell that they were holding back. Raze was physically running, and he struggled to find stable footing, especially downhill. He was trying his best to follow the path they had created. When the others traveled, though, they were taking single steps to leap all the way down, almost as if they were floating on air. It was the first time Raze had been around all high-level skill Pagno warriors, and it was quite the experience. One of the dead giveaways that they were holding back was that Kirk, who was at the back of the group, other than Raze at the very back, would turn his head once in a while and wait. Then, when Raze was close enough, he would set off again. At the front of the group, Fixteen and Dame were quite a bit ahead of the others. You know, there's a good chance we will get blamed for what is about to happen in that portal, Fixteen said. I know, but the circumstances were just unlucky for them, Dame replied. If we stayed, we would have gotten in trouble, and even if we helped, we might not have been able to defeat the Dimension Boss. Yes, but if the Light Faction group gets eliminated, or if it gets reported back what happened in there, since they had seen you, they will blame this whole thing on us, giving them an excuse to attack. Then we will just have to deal with that situation when it comes to it. For the future, the Dark Magus is more important, Dame answered. Based on the footsteps in the snow, Fixteen knew that a group of Light Faction warriors had entered the portal. Since it was a low-level portal, most likely the group that had entered were low-level as well. They would have entered with the aim of taking out a few beasts, and then, before they had taken out too many and summoned the Dimension Boss, they would have left. There was usually a time frame of how many deaths of beasts within a certain amount of time had to occur in order to summon the Dimension Boss. This number was different for each portal, but if this was one of the ways to activate the Dimension Boss, the clan in charge would have made note of it. What they wouldn't have expected was for a group to have entered before them and left just after summoning the Dimension Boss. Considering how they hadn't seen the Light Faction members on their way back to the portal, it meant that they had to have been somewhere in the city already, in the middle of the chaos. Inside the portal, that very thing was occurring, and Fixteen's fears were right. A group of 6 from the Light Faction had entered. All of them were wearing white clothing with bands wrapped around their waists and swords by their sides. The group was covered in dust and filth, while one was severely injured, with a strange green liquid having hit his arm. The skin had fallen off, and he had no choice but to slice his own arm off, while tying it up with part of his clothing. 2 of them had already perished. How could this have happened? We only killed 4 beasts, one of the warriors shouted. We should have gone back the moment we saw the other dead beasts. We should have known something was up. This is not our fault, men, one of the older warriors shouted with a lightly bearded face. His name was Jalen, and he was in charge of looking after the group. These things don't happen by accident. It's quite clear that someone has entered without permission, but we must focus and survive. After shouting those words, they could feel the rumbling sensation in the ground below. Quickly, Jalen leaped away, jumping onto one of the building rooftops. However, the other 3 were too slow. Breaking out of the ground, a large green serpent burst through, opening its mouth wide. It swallowed the men whole. The only saving grace was that their lives would end quickly, as they were dissolved in the special acid the serpent had in its body. It wasn't like the typical serpent where their bodies would slowly be digested. I try my best to look after them, but now I have failed. The only thing I could do now is head back and report this matter, Jalen thought. The beast would be too strong for him to handle. It would burrow itself back in the ground again, as it had done so far. This was the only chance Jalen had. He sprinted, jumping from rooftop to rooftop, hoping that it would be harder for the beast to track him. According to the information obtained by the other members, the dimension boss won't touch the wall or go past it. If I reach there, I can make it in time. Jalen had run with everything he had. When he was close to the wall, he leaped up through the air. From the ground beneath, he could see it rumbling, and breaking through the ground moments later was the serpent again, with its mouth wide open. Crescent moon strike, Jalen shouted out as his sword lit up, and he swung it through the air. Chi emitted from his strike and hit the serpent's mouth, causing it to flinch and close. Meanwhile, Jalen had made it onto the wall. He was huffing and panting, and when he looked down, he could see the beast retreating back in the ground, burrowing itself. He felt the vibrations lessen, signaling that the beast had gotten away. I must report this as soon as I can. Jalen had exited out of the portal, and immediately he descended down the mountain. Perhaps he should have rested, but he didn't. The thought of those who had died in front of him stayed fresh in his mind. He needed to do this, to avenge them in any way possible. He did whatever he could to get to the clan base as quickly as he could, and when he eventually arrived, he reported everything. The news of what had occurred in the portal had spread, and it had reached the ears of a certain individual. It was none other than Beatrix Highborn from the Dawnblade clan. Immediately, she burst into the dojo-styled room, where an older woman with ash-gray hair sat on top of a chair. Beatrix bowed down on one knee with her hands in front of her. "Master, I have no doubt that what happened to the mountainside portal today occurred because of the demonic faction using our portal as they pleased. Please let me take revenge on the demonic faction by leading the attack myself," Beatrix requested. Raze continued to follow the group through the lands. After descending the mountain, he thought that traversing the flat surface land would be easier, but it was clear that the others had taken their movement to another level. They were able to move even faster than before. "I've only just become a Pagno warrior in this world. Do you expect me to keep up with all of you just like that?" Raze thought as he huffed and panted. His current situation reminded him a lot of his training with Crone when he had first arrived. Thankfully, the scenery around them had changed as well, and it wasn't all barren wastelands. There were fields with soil but with strange-colored plants, and even the forest had leaves present, although many of them were oddly shaped or mostly fallen on the ground, littering the forest floor to the point where one couldn't see the real floor underneath. Eventually, a large city of lights appeared on the horizon, and Raze slowed his pace to take in the sight. They were on higher ground on a hilltop, allowing them to see the entire city in its glory. The night sky was out, so the city was lit up with lanterns. They hung off buildings, lighting up the streets. The pagodas were covered with them, as were the larger buildings. Unlike the town Raze was in, several of the buildings here had more than one floor. The rooftops were still slanted and curved out, like the town he had come from, and all of the buildings were colored in a similar dull gray, with several areas of red. All the glowing lanterns were red as well, giving the entire city a bright hue. "It's quite beautiful, isn't it?" Dame continued to look at the city with a small smile on his face. He had one leg up on a large rock as he stared out into the distance. "This is the city of Repton. It's at the center of the demonic faction, so it's a busy place with a lot of trade. It even has the largest auction in the faction. For the time being, this will be quite a nice place for you to stay, don't you think?" The group continued forward and entered the city with no problems. Raze was still twisting and turning his head, trying to take in everything he could see. Despite it being night, the streets were busy and full of people. The streets were a lot wider, and people were still eating outside. Restaurants and inns were filled with people eating and drinking. As they continued to walk, Raze passed several market stalls as well. These were better set up than the ones he had seen in the town. They weren't crooked and slanting. These stalls were straight with a roof on top, and nearly every stall even had a name plaque on the outside. Even the items they were presenting were displayed in a far better order. "All right, just let me know what you need to make 10 of those potions that you made last time. I'll cover the material costs, And if there is anything else you want, as long as it's within reason, I'll get it for you as well, Dame said. Raze already felt like it was the right thing to have come here. He didn't even have to pay for anything, and he could buy even more stuff than before. First, Raze bought several more bottles. Kirk was carrying around a large case on his back that was wrapped around his body with some rope. Whatever Raze pointed at, the items would then be filled into the crate. 20 bottles in total had been placed inside, 10 for the order from Dame, and 10 for him to do what he wanted with. As they continued looking around, Raze didn't stop there. He picked up a standard ring that had been requested to enhance his magic. It was fine because he had in mind what he wanted to make. He continued going from stall to stall, doing the little trick he had done before. He was looking for items that would react well to magic. If I can find something like that earring last time, then maybe I can get an item that's just as good as Simeon. I'll have to use my dark magic, and the item will either be cursed or sealed, but it will be worth it. And I've got plenty of crystals to try to make a higher tier crystal with. Eventually, his little trick worked on one of the stalls. Of all things the magic had reacted to, it was a statue of a simple man in old farmer's clothes made out of stone. These items are a bit more difficult since they can't be worn on one's body, but they still have their uses, Raze thought. Are you sure you want this? Dame asked, lifting the statue. It was so cheap, costing less than a single silver coin. I can get you much better souvenirs if that's what you're looking for. It's okay. I just want this one, Raze replied. Dame looked at the items that had been bought so far, and he felt they were extremely odd. He understood the bottles, but the ring and the statue? What use were these? Stopping at another stall, Raze was surprised to see such things sold out in the open. They were chi pills, the same type of pills that Crone had given him. Ah, these things will be useless for you. Since you're already a stage 1 Pagna warrior, it won't do much if you were to eat it. It only has 10 years of chi inside. It's good for restoring part of your chi, but in terms of increasing your chi and your dantian, it wouldn't have any effect. You would at least need a pill that has 50 years of chi. It was good to learn about the different chi pills and how they affected him now that he was already a warrior, but he never had the intention of eating the pill. I'll take one, Raze said. With all the items bought, it was time for them to rest for the night. Dame entered a relatively small and quiet inn on the outskirts of the city. He was looking out for the Dark Magus, since he didn't want him to be caught, especially by Alba, who visited the place rather frequently. A room had been rented out for Raze, and although it was nicer than his room at the temple, it was still relatively small and barren of objects. But it had a bed, toilet, and facilities for cleaning oneself, so he couldn't really complain. All right, I have to head back to my clan with the others. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon to collect the items, and I'll be giving you your reward for all of this. I promise you won't be disappointed, Dame said before leaving the room. Left on his own, Raze didn't plan to sleep just yet, with excitement coursing through his veins. All right, Raze said, heading to the crate that had been left behind. It's time to enchant some items so I can get strong enough that not even the academy principal can stop me. All in all, after the countless number of beasts that Raze had hunted before the others had arrived, as well as those he had hunted while with Dame and his group, he now had a total of 26 power stones. The first thing he did was feed a stone to his robe, bringing his number down to 25. That way, he didn't have to worry about it randomly taking one item. With the large number of stones he had at the moment, he didn't mind sparing one. All right, so now it's time for the second task. Bringing out a piece of chalk, Raze started to draw the magic circle on the ground, and then he carefully placed the bought ring on the floor. It was a green jade ring. The color was specifically chosen so he could differentiate which ring did what. After all, the cursed black ring had an unwelcome effect if taken off. Activating the magic circle with his wind attribute magic, it lit up, and the ring glowed for a few seconds before returning to its original state. Raze didn't need to ask what the ring did. He knew what enchantment circle he had used. Kneeling down, he picked up the ring and placed it on one of his fingers. I remember a number of different enchantments, and I can always experiment with my enchantments if the item has a high affinity with magic, but it would be helpful if I had access to certain recipes for different enchantments. I wonder if Alter has any. The leader is a 6-star mage, after all. Now with the rings on his fingers, Raze could actually gauge his different types of magic growing. Wind attribute, 11. Dark attribute, 29. Oh, it increased more than I thought. I guess repeatedly using wind magic to kill those beasts came in handy after all. On to the next part. Raze had redrawn the magic circle and had placed down the chi pill that had been bought, along with the crystal. Magic circles were almost a set of instructions for what to do with the items, and then the crystal was the energy that was used to allow the spell of the circle to work in the first place. Right now, after activating the spell, the pill had broken and was destroyed, but it started to turn into a small mist and formed words in front of Raze, just like when he would ask for the effects of items. Wheat, water, oil, salt, egg, level 1 power stone, silverstone flower seed. I see. So these are the ingredients that are used to make chi pill. I guess they then condense all of the ingredients with a furnace, but I will only need the outer layer. So I can forget about the power stone and the flower seed being a part of the chi pill itself. With this information at hand, Raze wasted no time leaving the inn and heading back out to the market. He was now on a quest to buy the following items. Even though Dame wasn't with him, he still had coins from selling the previous power stone to alter. The ingredients, since they weren't anything special, weren't hard for him to come by after buying them. After buying the ingredients, it was then time for him to quickly return to his room. Placing the ingredients on the floor, Raze had placed the power stone down as well, but there was no bottle. That was because he was trying to create something else other than bottles. There's just one more touch I want to add to this magic formation. Inside the magic circle, 2 letters were written, DM. Activating the formation with dark magic, all of the ingredients lifted into the air. They then started to turn into nothing but energy particles as they clashed together and began to condense down. There was a slight flash of light, and when it disappeared, in its place was a dark blue-colored chi pill, with 2 letters engraved on it, Dim. Picking up the small chi pill, Raze placed it into the palm of his hand. He looked at his handiwork and the engraving, which had a slight purple tint to it. I like this, I like it a lot. It looks like it worked, Raze thought. This chi pill has the exact same effect as the cursed mana potion. If I plan to sell items in this place, then I need something that is more familiar to them. The potion bottles would be a hard ask, but the pills, I can already imagine them spreading. With the marking, they will know it's my product. The D and M are embedded in a part of the pill itself. So with a magnifying glass, someone would be able to tell if someone just carved the letters on a pill, letting them know the difference between a real and a fake. When creating items and products for the mass market, one had to think about the future as well, and Raze was thinking quite a few steps ahead. With the potions in the form of chi pills, it would be harder for Alter to detect as well, and they would think it was a product of alchemy rather than magic. Starting in the demonic faction, it would take a while for these to spread out as well. Raze went on to create 9 more of the dark blue-colored pills, allowing him to complete the order that Dame had placed. After that, he still had 13 crystals as well. Before, I would have just sold the rest of the crystals for coins. After all, buying materials and items will become quite important for the future, Raze thought. But there's a way I can make even more money. For now, Raze would leave the enchanting of the statue for later. He wanted a higher-level power stone. Although he could do the same as he had done before for the earring, there was a chance he could burn through quite a number of crystals since it wasn't always a success combining crystals. After Raze continued to enchant several items and create chi pills, he eventually decided to get some sleep. It wasn't long after that a knock was heard on his door. Dark Magus, it's me, Dame. I have arrived. A voice was heard through the door. Raze opened his eyes and could see rays of light hitting him. He had fallen asleep with his clothes on and hadn't even drawn the curtains, yet he still hadn't woken up due to the sun. He was exhausted. It's been a long time since I pulled an all-nighter like that. It's quite exciting just getting into the state of flow when working. Getting up, Raze made sure his hood was up, covering his face as he went to the door, undoing the locks. Opening it up, Dame was there, but this time it was just him on his own. I'm happy to see you slept quite well, Dame said, shutting the door behind him. I think you're going to like the gifts I bought you. Your special drink was a big hit, so I think I should equally reward you with something nice as well. Inside the inn, other than the bed, there was a desk and a single chair. As if the place were his own home, Dame pulled the table away from the wall and placed it toward the bed. This way Raze could stay on the bed, and Dame could use the seat and the table between the two. Soon after, with a large grin on his face, he went into his robe and placed 2 books out right in front of him. "Ta-da," Dame said, pleased with himself. "What I have for you right here are 2 skill books that belong to my clan. Just to let you know, they aren't just any skill books. These books are usually reserved for only clan members, which means only those within the clan know how to use these skills. On top of that, I would say that our clan is the strongest clan in the entire demonic faction, and that the demonic faction is the strongest faction. So if you think about it, I'm giving you 2 of the strongest skills." Hearing Dame speak, Raze was reminded of those damn spaceship salesmen. They wouldn't stop talking about the features of this and that. Then when one went to buy the thing, they would be bombarded with a load of extras. It felt almost as if Dame was just trying too hard to say how precious these skills are. "I can tell from the look on your face that you don't believe me," Dame continued and pushed the books forward. Just like before, some of the content of the books was scratched. Not only that, but the books didn't look old. They looked new, and even the ink was relatively new. "Did you hand copy these?" Raze asked. Dame winked. "That just goes to show you how precious these skill books are. Honestly, your special drink you made turned out to be great for a certain client of mine. That's why I ordered 10 more from you. So I brought you 2 of the books that were of equivalent value. No, you could say even more. One for the first drink, and the second for the new order." Rather than wondering whether or not Dame was trying to pull a fast one on him, he thought he could really only tell after reading the contents of the book. Opening it up, he flicked through the first one's pages. "Can you understand it okay?" Dame asked, peeking over, trying to gauge Raze's reaction. Before answering, Raze looked at the second book. He had skimmed through them enough to gather what the 2 skill books were. "It's a foot technique and a sword technique?" Raze questioned, his tone dropping off slightly toward the end. "You seem a bit disappointed," Dame said, sitting back down. "After completing your core, the next important step is foot techniques. They're the basis of nearly all martial arts. That foot technique is known as the 10 descending steps. With each step, there's more power that is placed into it, and each strike grows stronger. You can pull off most skills along with the steps, and the further you get through using the steps, the more powerful your strike will be. It's a foot technique that grows with the user as a Pagna warrior. Even I only know 6 of the 10 steps." Ray still didn't know if it was a sales pitch or not, but his words were working. "If I was to use this skill, would people know that it's a skill from your clan or the demonic faction? Same with this other skill?" Raze asked. "At the moment, I doubt it," Dame explained. "You see, our clan members haven't fought against anyone for years, and there aren't many that know these skills. It's the same with any clans. Unless it's someone of age that has gone against the demonic faction, I doubt they would know what either of these are." In short, it meant although he could use these skills in front of students, it was likely that the academy principal and perhaps the examiners would know of these skills. Well, it's not like it's illegal to use other faction skills, just frowned upon within factions, Raze thought. A no-name like me using skills belonging to the demonic faction shouldn't sound so surprising. "This next book, it's a sword skill, but I've never used a sword in my life," Raze questioned. "And had you ever really thrown a fist before?" Dame asked. He knew the answer after seeing Raze throw a fist with chi from before. Swords, spears, staffs, blades, gauntlets, and yada yada yada. They're frequently used in the world of Pagna, and the sword is the most common, and for good reason. It is one of the easiest to learn, but also one of the hardest to master. If mastered, you will be able to rule the world, some say. Just like with the steps, I have chosen a skill that will grow with you. Although not as impressive, there are 3 formations to the sword skill. However, combine it with the steps, and you'll have a number of different combinations that you can use that your opponent won't be able to handle. Raze wasn't just thinking that if he combined it with his magic as well, possibly he would be one of the strongest magic swordsmen that existed. He couldn't wait to give it all a try. "And how many formations do you know of the sword technique?" Raze asked. "Me," Dame pointed to himself. "I don't use swords. Swords are for wise people, and I'm not very wise, so I prefer to just use my fists. Once again, Raze was getting an odd feeling that he might just be getting scammed, but for him, even simple techniques might be able to create something extremely powerful, just like his Dark Strike. I have something to show you as well, Raze said. He held out his hand and soon dropped onto the table one by one the dark blue-colored chi pills, and they were 10 in total. Seeing them, Dame tilted his head. He had never seen such colored chi pills before, and he noticed the marking on them. This is the order that you asked for. I decided to make it in a style that is more suitable to this world's taste, Raze explained. They're smaller and more compact as well, but they have the same effect. Picking it up off the table, sparkles were coming out of Dame's eyes. This right here, is this your marking? Is this so you know that it's your creation? Dame seemed to catch on quickly. There's more than just that, Raze said as he dropped 3 more chi pills, each one of them a slightly different color, all with the DM marking on them. All of these pills here each have a different effect that would be beneficial for a Pagna warrior. So what do you think? Do you think these will sell or do well here? Raze hadn't even explained what each of the pills did, but Dame's imagination was already running wild, which was why he had come to the decision right there and then as he blurted out his next words. I want to go into business with you, and I want to spread the name of you and your product, so everyone will come to us in order to get the Dark Magus products.